the baby back out. Make the baby sleep. That's good. That's good. Little tin soldier, happy tin soldier, right? And now with an attitude. Hello? Who are you? Get away. I don't like what you say. Now,
How are we, everybody?
How are we?
Nina, Junt, Frankie, and Babby.
And Babby.
Our kid, Gloria Joy Frayne,
Gloria Joy. Beautiful name.
is she's 1 week old today. She was born on Father's Day 2017, which was June 18th, 2017. By the way,
At 8:30 at night.
I've already
8:30 at night.
I've already decided that like what the marker of a good parent is one that has memorized their kid's social security number and blood type. Because like whenever I was a kid and like I would need to know it, my mom would know it right off the top of her head.
I don't know my own blood type. I have no idea.
You know your social security.
I do.
I don't know my own blood
used,
type either.
It's used continuously in my life.
Do we know hers yet?
No, not yet.
So I got to know that, and
Yep.
I don't think she even has a social yet.
Not yet.
No, we haven't received it in the
She
mail.
is so young; she doesn't have a social.
She is so young that she doesn't have insurance. Like, we had to fill out qualifying event forms for your work, and she has not yet been issued her insurance card. So she is
That's
going
how early
everywhere,
it is.
racking up a bill. We're having to write waivers everywhere we go that we'll pay for it if your insurance doesn't.
So she was born 7 pounds 4 ounces.
Yep.
Which is exactly the weight that I was
Really?
when I was born.
That's
my,
fascinating.
My mom was happy to report.
Now, how does that rate? And like, you got to remember, I do not have much baby knowledge, right? Any baby
Mine is
knowledge
growing.
I had, obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, it should be by now. But any baby knowledge I had is circa 1992 and through the filter of a 12-year-old, being 12. So
She is square average. The average baby is 6.5 to 8.5 pounds.
6.5. So she's right in the center.
I'm going to brag about my kid a little bit.
All right. You're entitled. You're our father.
The word has been perfect ever since, before she was born.
Yep.
Nina would go in for her measurements. She would always be measuring perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
They would take a heart rate. She'd be measuring perfectly.
Yep.
We just kept hearing, your baby's doing perfectly, like over and over and over again.
Wonderful.
And then when she was born, that's all we heard about was, wow, she's perfect. She's perfect in every way.
Yep.
Maybe a little tiny bit of jaundice levels that we had to get down.
Yep.
That was about it. I hear a little meh. I'd love to get her on the microphone because someday she's going to podcast with me.
She's going to listen to this.
Ain't it adorable?
That's so cute.
So, what didn't go perfectly was the delivery. It didn't go disastrously either. What constitutes a delivery disaster exactly?
Well, I would think if there was an injury,
Serious
or,
injury.
if she had to go to like the NICU, like she didn't even have to go to like any special nursery care
I would say
or
even
a resuscitation.
even 6 months to a year of recovery for the mother.
Yep.
It's pretty bad. That's not a situation you want to be in.
Yeah.
We're not in anything like that.
That's good.
It didn't turn into like an emergency C-section, like that we weren't rushed off because of some terrible event.
Yep. I was an emergency C-section.
Were you really?
Yep.
Do you know what your measurements were when you were a kid?
I was close to being one because I was a case of shoulder dystocia where my shoulders were like they thought they were too big to fit.
Yep.
And then
And you were almost C-section.
and I was my mom ended up just having a ton of tearing.
So for people who don't like to hear about like delivering babies and get squeamish about like these sorts of body details and stuff, assuming Nina is comfortable with whatever level of detail we get into.
Body horror.
There's a little bit of body horror we're going to get into. And so if you're like, if that's not your thing, especially if you're a woman, you're like, I can't imagine my vagina experiencing that.
Don't worry, Frankie's going to make it funny. It's not going to be like academic or anything, guys.
So we're gonna try to make it funny and be respectful of Nina's body while not really holding back any info.
All right.
I think we want to, even just for ourselves and maybe for Glow, assuming that she's crazy like us when she's older, if she wants to know this sort of stuff. Because I only just found out I wasn't breastfed.
Really?
It took having a baby to like get to ask the question.
Yeah.
Of my mom, but not one bit. She told me that I was that she tried with my older sister, and it was sort of painful and annoying, and so she ended up sort of giving up with me completely.
Yeah,
Like, the hell with it.
I really have no idea if I was or not. I think so. I really don't know, and I'm not sure my father would remember.
But there's like a real cult around it.
Yeah,
like we learned.
Well, I think I think it's the way to go. Right, that's my my view on it.
What do you think the benefits are?
I mean,
we are doing it before there will be no insulting.
I've only heard it kind of academically because, again, babies are not a thing I hugely research, but I've read like that it has benefits for the baby's intelligence, benefits for the baby's immune system,
right? Mother-daughter bonding,
mother-child bonding. So it's really. I've heard nothing but good things.
I mean, Nina's doing it as we speak.
Yeah.
But we actually went to Nina signed us up for a couple of classes. I'll say this. The entire time that Nina was pregnant, and for anybody who like has listened to stuff way back, it was kind of like a tough thing in our relationship where we didn't know whether or not we were going to have kids. I was sort of leaning towards them. Nina was leaning away from them.
Yeah.
And I think we just got to a point in our lives where it was kind of like, well, if we don't, then like, will we ever? And if we won't ever, like, what is it that we're doing with our lives? Is it like, are we so altruistic that we're going to find some other purpose? And I think there's some degree of, there's a lot of families that raise a lot of unideal situation children or unideal circumstances. And we have pretty ideal circumstances in terms of financial stability, a house.
Yep.
We nearly own our house because we bought it when we were so young, because we got together so young. There's all kinds of good reasons for Nina and I to have a kid.
Yeah.
So we kind of took the plunge in October 2016, and we were like, let's just like kind of go unprotected for a little bit and see what happens.
Yep.
Well, that week we got pregnant.
That week.
It turned and Nina, I remember, was really scared. They're like, well, what, will this be like a point of tension in our relationship if we can't get pregnant? What then?
Yeah.
It was literally like, I couldn't tell you the date.
Yep.
But because there was just a lot of trial during that time. But I remember she was like right on the brink of having her period, so we didn't know if it would work. And then she had her period, and then she was like, I'm kind of sad I'm not pregnant. I'm like, we barely even got this thing underway. And then
just barely begun.
Once she ovulated, like the next time, it was a slam dunk, and it was just so weird. Like to the point that I remember feeling like we weren't pregnant for a little while. Like I remember like she, the strip was saying it, but I was like, yeah, but those are wrong, right?
Yeah. They're not really accurate. This isn't the real thing, right?
And then she went to a couple of GYN appointments, and it was quite clearly yes.
Yeah.
And then we had to roll out the news. And I think the first time we went public with it for the podcast / the YouTube thing was on the Christmas How Are We?
Yep. I
told my parents Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a good story, telling my parents.
Yes. Yeah, you told me this, and this is really good. Because
my parents, especially in my more rebellious years, I was really assertive about like, we're not having kids.
Yeah,
like
I remember that. It was a firm stance of yours.
I took Nina's energy about it and sort of used it to, I don't know, I guess scare them a little bit or be adolescent about it. Mm-hmm. And I never brought it back up again. So that was the
as far as they knew, that was probably the end all and be all.
They left off on,
yeah.
and they knew not to push, because if you push, you just make it more.
You're just going to make it worse.
Yeah, but I also knew not to talk about it much, because if we talked about it too much, then I don't know, maybe Nina wouldn't want to. So we went up to my sister's in Maine, and my sister has 3 boys, and my sister has a really big house, and it was the first time we'd ever been there. And there's kids screaming and stuff, and it was only 8 weeks. You're supposed to tell, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that?
12 weeks.
Yeah, 12 weeks. But it was only like 8 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Am I right?
It was 10 weeks.
10 weeks?
Right.
And yeah, I remember like Nina counting down like the percentage risk of miscarriage like over and over again.
Yep. Sounds like a Nina thing to do.
Because once you're pregnant, you start to you get real invested in the whole thing.
Of course.
But she didn't want to tell anybody. And I remember even before we got pregnant, she was like, I don't want to tell anybody until like 20 weeks.
Yeah.
Or it was something like that. Like 30 weeks if possible. We'll push it. But I had it in my mind that we were going to tell my entire family at the same time. And then once that happened, it was like, well, we need to tell your entire family.
Yeah.
So it's not too often I'm with my sister and my mom and dad.
Yep.
And my sister's husband and all their kids and stuff. And so it was Thanksgiving. It was a little early to do it. But we're sitting at the table and the kids are screaming and they won't sit down. And and I'm not finding my pocket to make this announcement.
Yeah.
And
You need like a little air, a little room around it to.
And it's also like it's one of those like I don't remember the last time I made a family announcement.
Yeah.
I don't think ever.
Yeah. Has there ever been a case in your life where you
No.
needed to like say, everyone, I need a moment?
It would probably be bad news.
Yes.
If I had to do that.
Yeah, it would.
And I think
almost always.
So when I saw one golden opportunity, I remember Nina just tensing up because she knew what was coming.
She could see the moment about to happen.
And I was like, so I have to tell everyone something.
Yeah.
And that's when
Yeah.
the record scratches.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
in their minds, it's like he lost his job. He's getting another job. Nina and him are breaking up.
There's some real bad thing about to happen.
Yeah, probably. And so I didn't have the words for it. So I sort of gestured back and forth to Nina and I.
Yep.
And I said, we're having a baby. And then time slows down in this moment.
Yep.
My sister goes off like a firework, like a slow motion firework, where I just kind of see her going, oh my God. And then my mom is like, she goes off next.
Yep.
Like it was the firework right
the
after.
chain, yeah. It just got lit like 30 milliseconds
I
later.
believe they jumped to their feet.
Yep.
And came around the table to, I don't know, touch people.
Your mom came.
Yeah.
Put hands, lay hands.
And somewhere in the hysteria, I forget where my dad is.
Yeah.
And I look across the table and he's bright red,
Yeah.
staring at his uneaten food.
He looked like he might have been choking.
Yeah. And I just see him go, wow. It blew his fucking mind.
Have you ever gotten that reaction out of your father before?
No. He was just it was complete unexpected relief.
And this is after they were trying to separate us. Do you remember they wanted me to sit at one end of the table and you at the
I was
other,
like,
but you
I'd
knew you were
rather
going to make
sit
it
with Nina if possible.
If it's okay with
I don't want to be
you.
like, the girl over there
and
impregnated.
And your dad had gotten kind of attitudey, like we were being impossible, and it was like, no, fine. Like he finally gave in.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So then they start sort of launching into like, what about this? What about that? I have so much stuff to donate to you. 'Cause my sister has 3 kids,
Yeah.
and she had just had her 3rd and supposedly final. She keeps flirting with the idea of a 4th. She 6 months prior.
Yep.
And then my dad gets up and he leaves the room, and he just like plays with the oldest one, quietly in the other room somewhere.
Like just him and the oldest one, like sitting there, like
And later on,
he's trying to work through it.
Just staring at the television.
later on, my sister was like, "I thought Dad like left and went just to go die somewhere." Just out of such
Just
happiness.
laid down, and that was the end of.
And then he comes over and he goes, like, kind of quietly to me, he goes, "Hey, Frank, tremendous."
Tremendous.
And then I think later on he's like, I didn't want you to lose out on it all, or something like that.
Telling basically he was horrified that you were never going to have kids.
And then Nina told her parents, or her mom and stepdad anyway, through like she gifted them like some childhood books, right?
Yeah, like the little critters books, like where it's like the little
classic.
critters. Yeah, it's my teacher and me, my mother and me, my day fishing, all that stuff. There's like a my grandparents and me one. So
we also
gave
were,
them that book.
We were at Nina's grandmother's funeral when we figured we were probably pregnant.
Yeah.
Because they had a hot tub there, and Nina was like, "Ooh, I better not."
Yeah. Yep.
And you were like, just do it. What's the likelihood? Like, it's so early.
Yeah.
In the hotel, I mean, not at the funeral.
Yeah. It'd be kind of weird.
Like a hot tub.
My grandmother knew how to party.
That'd be sweet, actually. If there was a hot tub at your funeral.
Oh goodness.
So that was that, and then that kind of launched. Oh well, then there naturally there's like, what's the gender? What's the name? And Gloria had always been a name we thought of for several reasons. One, we like that Gloria. That's Santa Maria, Gloria.
Yeah.
We like that. There was somebody I used to work with named Gloria. I always thought it was a nice name because it was one I never heard.
Yeah.
It's the daughter's name on All in the Family, a show I love. Am I out of reasons? I mean, I guess that's it.
Did we already cover in a podcast what the name would have been if it was male?
Felix.
Felix.
Yeah, which is the middle name of my paternal grandfather who I never met. My dad barely
Yeah.
ever met.
And we kind of like it because it's kind of a classic name and you don't hear it a lot, but.
And it was sort of like it's kind of because I'm the 3rd Francis.
Yep.
So it would have sort of broken that, but in a maybe slightly family creative way.
Yeah.
Was the idea.
I was almost a Samuel.
Yeah?
Very nearly.
Well,
It came down right to the last minute.
wow.
I think you could
Samuel
pull that
Edward?
off.
Samuel Edward is a pretty good name.
Yeah.
I think you could pull that off too.
Interesting. Well, maybe if we have a boy, we should name him Samuel Edward.
Uh-oh, more babies in the
That's the
queue?
whole first name. No, I don't think so. To be truly honest, I'm not really keen on a second one.
Yeah.
Nina's not either. We've been sort of, because we love this kid so much that we've been kind of thinking of like, well, we can't love another one this much. Or, like
Like, if you have another one, it's just obviously not going to be as good. So, like, why put someone through that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if we ever have another one.
I'm sorry, other kid we definitely had.
Yeah, right. I've also been freaking Nina out with like imposter syndrome, where I'm like, hey, think of it this way: like, if like whatever night we conceived or day or whatever it was, what if we just decided not to that day? Maybe we were too full or something. Do it the next day, and then like somebody else is named Gloria.
Yeah.
It's not that particular baby anymore.
Oh, I know.
And she was like, that freaks me out. Like this
It's all by, like, you could bring it back even further. Like, every single event had to happen exactly as it did in your life to produce this child.
Yeah.
True. Like, if Frankie drank less Mountain Dew or something,
Yeah.
like, there'd be a different kid here.
If I hadn't recommended gem plumbing and heating, would you even have had this baby?
we definitely wouldn't have the AC.
Yeah.
So extrapolate from there.
Yeah.
It would have made having a baby a lot harder.
So the following. Oh yeah, the name and the gender. So you find out the gender a lot earlier now.
Yeah.
You can. I've watched a lot of people wait till the 20-week ultrasound, so they're finding out kind of halfway through, and that's what a lot of people do when they do the big like gender reveal party or cake or stuff you see on Facebook now. But we found out really early because we decided on some genetic testing early on.
It's called Maternity 21.
Yeah,
And our insurance actually covered it. We were
really?
told that it probably wouldn't be.
at like 10 or 12 weeks.
It would be a few
So
$100.
12.
Wow, 10 weeks?
I think it was 12 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
So we knew by Christmas time ish, and it tells you if the child has Downs or any other major
Chromosomal abnormalities.
Yeah.
And while they're looking at the chromosomes anyway, they can tell you if they're
They
male
can
or
tell
female.
you that early. So if you do decide you want to terminate, you
Yeah.
can, which I think is pretty good. I mean,
It's a very powerful tool.
that's kind of a game changer to some degree. I mean, you can almost like knock out some of these genetic abnormalities with that.
If your insurance hadn't covered it, would have been very expensive.
It would have been
500?
about 500 to
Yeah.
700.
Not even that much.
No, we didn't think the insurance was going to cover it. We were just like, yes.
And we were still like, yeah, do it. They were like, well, you can call your insurance company first. And we were like, no, we're going to pay for it if they don't. So
Yeah.
it was a simple blood test on me. Like
Yep.
there wasn't even anything
Wow.
intrusive to it.
So we knew it would be either Gloria or Felix, and I think by that point, my mom's first name is Joy. I think by that point, I had floated the idea of I'm like Gloria Joy is kind of nice, and Nina really liked it. She really shined to it.
Yep.
So
And she's already got the nickname Glow. I heard you just use it. That's her. That'll probably survive through her whole life. I'm
probably
sure.
it's a common nickname for Gloria.
It is. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I like it for some reason. Some people are like, that's a little old lady-ish because there's old ladies named Glow.
I don't think so. It doesn't come off like that to me.
I don't think most people know about it.
No.
I think it's old. I mean, it's so old that it's not old.
Yeah.
So old, it's new again.
Yes. So depending on if it was a boy or a girl, we kind of knew the name. I don't think we ever had a middle name for the boy. But anyway,
I had experimented with some silly ones like Batman and things like that.
Rocky and shit.
Felix Batman for
So when we found out it was a girl, Nina found out before I did. I was at work.
That's true. I got a call on my phone with the results.
And she did the cute thing where like my whole room was decorated pink with pink balloons and shit.
Really?
Like that. Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it was really nice. Because I knew all day that she knew.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was one of the nights that I go to my parents' house every Thursday for dinner, and they knew that I was going to know when I got home, and they had to figure out like how quickly to whisk me off to home.
But it worked out well because I had to run to like iParty after work and get all the balloons and everything.
Yeah.
So I was glad you were going
really
over
cute.
there. And I wanted to just torture you with it. I could have just told you.
So then we were faced with do we tell people what the gender is? Do we tell them what the name is? Because people ask, even though in my experience, most people I know will withhold pretty much all information until birth. I mean, they like to know.
Your sister told everyone like the gender of the kids, but then didn't tell the names until they were born.
Yep.
But I'm not really a very secretive person, as evidenced by this very podcast. So I was like, well, I don't really mind telling people. And the only reason Nina didn't want to talk about gender was because she didn't want to get inundated by like extremely gendered clothing and gifts and
Yeah.
sort of be saddled with all of this like.
Yep.
And then the name thing, to be a little bit more paranoid and make myself sound crazy, future child is, or current child in the future, is then I didn't want to share the name because if something did happen and we had a loss, then it's like, well, you can't use that name. Like everybody knew that name was
that name is
attached to a human being.
Yeah.
So,
which I'm not sure I really see it quite. I mean, I definitely understand that, but I'm not sure I see it that way. Like I feel like it's sort of a leased name until it's assigned to an actual child. Like I feel like
I think different people would view that differently.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. I think even if we kind of came around to using it, I think a lot of people would find it weird, and I didn't want to deal with that.
Like what? So is every kid of theirs Gloria? What's going on?
I mean, I had like 3 iguanas named Drew, and like Drusilla. It was like Drew, and then Drew 2, and then like I just started naming him Drew.
I should also mention for anybody who doesn't know, including possibly our daughter when she listens to this, we had 2 very helpless, adorable, small, needy dachshund puppies from the time Nina was in middle school to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And named Peebo and Gambit. Gambit came 2 years later, but a long time. They both died at 15. Peebo died of... we had to put her down because of dementia, and Gambit died one day. We found him dead when we came home from just going out to eat one day.
I remember it was very sad.
He had a heart attack. Yeah, it was super sad. But he kind of, Peebo she was the girl. It was really tricky to like decide when the right time, because she had such bad dementia. She was starting to fall off the bed and stuff, and she couldn't lead a comfortable life. Yep. And that was a really hard decision. Gambit kind of just took the decision out of our hands. Yeah. He was just like, I'll just die in the kitchen.
That's me.
And he did it 2 months after we put Peebo down. So we actually went a very small amount of time with only one dog. Which we thought we would get one a lot longer or something like that and be more manageable. He was also pissing and shitting the bed a lot. Like, because he sleeps in the bed with us.
Yep.
So I bring this up because Nina, despite her shying away from having children, was always a maternal figure to these dogs.
Oh, I remember just casually hearing about Nina always getting up at night to take care of the dogs.
Up all night, sometimes.
Yep.
Because she would want to, they have such little bladders, they want to go out constantly.
Yep.
And
then once she got dementia, she would like cry all night. Like she had to be helped like an infant. It was so bizarre.
So people would hear that Nina didn't want kids and they'd be like, I don't get it. She already has kids. Like,
Nina obviously has a problem.
But she was, she had that sort of lesbian instinct of like, I just want dogs.
Now I gotta ask, and this may be a slightly offensive question.
Yeah.
But is the baby more trouble than the dogs at their worst?
Well, that's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question.
Because we've at their worst, she's easier than them at their worst.
Yeah.
We have found, and the reason I think that the dogs are relevant is because the dogs prepared us tremendously for this baby.
Really?
Yeah, like a lot of people are like, oh, they're not the same. Well, yeah, you don't breastfeed dogs, of course. I get that. But you want them to die just as little.
Yeah.
You like we revered their lives just as much as the babies. And there have been a couple of times where we've co-slept with the kid, which you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But Nina doesn't move a muscle when she sleeps because of the dogs, because she used to not want to rattle the dogs.
Yep.
So and also just the idea of like having kind of sleeping with one eye open and like not wanting to disturb something because it's going to wake up and be a pain in the ass. Yeah. Like it really honestly feels a lot like the dogs to me anyway.
Except so much cuter.
We thought Gambit was pretty cute.
The dogs were cute, yes.
But she's...
Well, the dogs are just mean and bark to everyone. Because she's not going to scream at everyone who comes in for a little while.
We hope not.
I mean, at least for now, where infants are sort of like, they cry, they eat, they poop.
Yeah.
It's kind of it. Like, I think, of course, as she gets older, she starts talking. You have to be concerned about her development and all this sort of stuff. But for right now, this is a lot like the dogs.
Yeah.
And the dogs were a little bit smarter than she is right now.
The only thing that's a little tough is like, if you're going to go out, you obviously have to take her, and then you're on her schedule because she needs to eat like every 2 hours. So,
But you learn that we didn't really have that rockin' of a life anyway.
No.
I mean, in the 2 years that we didn't have dogs, we've like went off like on like weekend trips a lot more often.
Yeah.
But we weren't doing that before that.
Yep.
No.
We sort of just took advantage of the time of that window.
Yeah, you could just, leave the house for a weekend and there's no problem.
So once we knew the gender, we kind of just gave in. We're like, screw it. Like my sister was desperate to know. I was getting like constant texts from my sister. I just gave in and told her, and then Nina, because of that, told her family. And then before you knew it, it was like, look, here's the name too, whatever. And
Here's the whole package.
I told work, and some people were surprised.
So much for my 30-week plan of like not
Yeah,
talking.
just like whatever. And I don't know. I'll say this: for me, it made life a lot easier.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be coy and cute. I just want to. This is the kid's name.
Yeah. Did you guys do any of those? I don't remember if you did, like any of those cutesy Facebook baby announcements.
No.
Thank goodness.
No, the way that Facebook found out was I tucked it into. Every year on Facebook, I post my accomplishments for the year.
Yep.
And it was, I don't even think it was the last one. I think it was tucked in there. Like,
Yeah, just in the middle.
got wife pregnant. And, lots of, like, it made this many Box Mac episodes. So a few people caught that and were like, congrats. But for that reason, a lot of people, like John Ryan, for instance, famed Red Cow actor.
Of course.
He only just found out we were even having a baby.
Just?
Yes. And then was like, oh, wow. And then talk of showers, baby showers kind of rolled in.
Yep.
Nina was that was sort of something that she was pretty keen on not doing, which of course is, grandmothers like to have showers.
Yes, I think mothers do too.
Yeah. What I mean is like Nina's mom.
Oh, yeah.
Grandmother.
Yeah. Oh, the baby's grandmother.
Yes. Yeah. Not like the baby's great grandmother. Is that what she thought I meant?
I don't know what I thought.
So
that happens too, though. Like if my grandmother was younger and still around,
Sure.
Yeah.
they like to do like the multi-generational women thing.
Yeah.
especially when it's all the same gender. But Nina was real intent on not doing that. So we that was a little bit of a fight and a struggle. I'm the dad's mom, my mom, cares a bit less because it's like a bride thing. You know? There's these customs for the women.
Yeah, your mom's been through it all before with Christy.
Yeah, so it wasn't necessary.
Yep.
Now on my side, they were just absolutely crazy thrilled that they were going to have a granddaughter because they had 3 grandsons.
Yep.
And my sister was pretty happy about it too because she's saddled with 3 boys. Not that she's complaining, but of course she wants. She would have wanted a girl in there somewhere.
Of course.
So we can grant that, and we're just 3 miles down the street from my parents. So my parents, like, their lives changed when we told them this. It was like, oh wow, like we.
Well, I'm sure they're going to be largely involved with the raising of this child.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, my dad is just about 70. My mom's just about 60.
Yep.
And so, it writes a new chapter for them. The fact that we, because theoretically, like if we didn't have kids, they could be like, well, screw it, we're going to move to Florida or something like that.
Yep.
But when we have kids, it sort of changes things a bit. So Nina kind of dove into 9 months of research. Like she really was with the iPad like nightly.
Yep.
Learning every little thing she could.
Yep.
And with the intention of raising a vegan baby.
Yep.
So we'll see how that goes. At least until a certain age. And then let her decide for herself.
So far, so good. Gloria hasn't turned to me and been like, I just can't live without cheese or anything like that.
Yeah, true. Although she's having an awful lot of milk. Hey.
Hey.
Is breast milk considered like non-vegan? I mean,
No, because it comes from your own species. I mean, the problem with
Drinking
vegans
somebody else's milk.
is you're going after other species'
Yeah.
reproductive secretions.
but like Nina got pretty like she wasn't too psyched out by the labor and delivery aspect of it. She read a lot of pain management stuff and about like, hey,
I got real crunchy about it. I was like, it's going to be fine. It's natural. It's great.
she was talking about how she was even kind of looking forward to it. She really considered the option of a home birth where she's like, man, I don't want it to turn into this big hospital thing and this big medical thing.
Yeah.
She was looking at cloth diapers for a little while, which we haven't done yet because it's still a newborn. But
Yeah, we still might, but it'll be a couple months out. I can't imagine trying to fit it into like our life now.
we went to a goofy place in Cambridge called the Diaper Lab.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. Like I get real turned off by pretension, as we know. I mean, breadcrumbs in my Mac is enough to send me off.
Yes, that's enough. I mean, the cloth diapers, I get the arguments for, but I don't know.
Come on. You're just making life hard.
We'll
really
see if I get there or not. It looks like a lot of work on this end now.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was like going to be a stay-at-home mom and like
Yeah.
home all day.
Yeah,
throw
it's just
a
one
wash
more
and-
thing to deal with.
to
and
do
add
at
to
the end of the day after
yeah.
work. I don't think it's going to happen.
So there's a lot of information about make sure to breastfeed your kid as much as possible.
Yep.
And try really hard not to get an epidural. An epidural, for those who don't know, is a shot in your spine that has a kind of I'm not sure, an anesthetic.
Yeah, it numbs you from the level you get the shot below.
Yeah,
Like-
for as long as they're sending it to you.
Yeah.
And the moment they stop it, you start to regain sensation.
Yep.
So the reason that they recommend against it, even though we found out later that the hospital that we delivered at, 95% of women get epidurals.
95.
And they go in planning on it. Because we ended up taking a class and they said, anybody, so who here plans on getting an epidural? And everybody in the room raised their hands except for Nina and I.
Wow.
Yeah, out
And
of like
so-
14 or 12 women. Yeah.
Which, by the way, controversial statement. All my life, I don't know if you heard this too,
Yeah.
as men, we have it thrown in our faces a little bit that like, well, we have to give birth and it's so hard. And look, I've now been through it and I see how hard it is. But if you plan to go in with an epidural, it's pretty much not hard at all.
Really?
It's pretty much like you just sit back with a magazine and do it. So I say I don't know. I think if you get the epidural, you kind of have to, unless you have some other complication, you kind of have to give up those bragging rights a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I have kind of a skewed perspective. I think that giving birth is an ordeal unto itself.
I mean, it is.
No matter what.
And certainly carrying the baby the 9 months and all that sort of stuff. I get it. But the, I don't know. Like if they now have, or if they have had for a while, the ability to make it not hurt at all.
Yeah.
And you're talking about how much it hurts all the time.
Sure.
That's hard for me to add up.
All right.
So the biggest reason not to do the epidural is because it increases risk of C-section. And the biggest reason to not want a C-section is because you just added major abdominal surgery to your delivery.
Yes.
Which could add many, many more weeks of recovery.
Yep.
And it is major. Yeah, I think for some reason, maybe because we don't talk about it in detail enough, but it is major abdominal surgery.
Yeah, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Nina's been finding in the last week that like the number one thing making this hard is her pain from delivery.
Yep.
Like, which people don't really talk about all that often.
Yep.
And we'll get into all that. But so she was really trying to avoid that, and she was like, "Hey, don't let me have the epidural." And I was like, "I promise I won't." She signed us up for 2 classes. One was a breastfeeding class, which went on for 4 hours. It was offered free at the hospital.
Yep.
And it was taught by a lactation nurse that we would ultimately end up having on our floor.
Oh, really? Yep.
So we got to know
I
her
didn't know
pretty
they
well.
had dedicated lactation nurses.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea to me.
Well, because it's so hard to get your baby to breastfeed.
Is it really?
Yeah.
This is an area I know nothing about.
I'll teach you all about
All right.
it.
Educate me.
I mean, it's a
Freya.
brand new little creature.
Yeah.
It does have the instinct to suck or to look for nutrients because it's been doing that in the uterus, but you got to teach it how.
Yep.
And the other thing is that there's such a thing as like a very shallow latch. So if the baby just sort of gets its mouth on your nipple and starts sucking, first of all, it's not going to get very much nutrients out of the breast.
Yep.
And second of all, it's going to chew, even with its little gums, all over your nipple and cause it to bleed and crack.
Yep.
Once it bleeds and cracks,
then there's no more.
it's extremely hard to continue breastfeeding for the weeks and months that you need to.
Yeah, I think I've heard that it reduces milk flow as well. Once it this is. I mean, my knowledge in this area is
Like
all
Nina's
very scatterform.
Nina's gotten like some scabbing, for instance, and so that so then she has to clear the scab, or like there's. So it can be a problem. So what they try to teach
It may be natural, but it's not instinctual. Like you don't just like know what to do. Like the baby didn't come out and I was like, I will put this baby on my nipple. Like it did not occur to me.
So they taught us that for that reason, within the first hour after the baby comes out, and immediately after the baby comes out, the idea is to go skin to skin with the baby.
Yep.
Skin to skin is a term that's used a lot.
Yeah.
It means human skin on human skin with the baby.
Is that like a new concept in delivery?
Not. Apparently this has been a thing for a while.
It's new in terms of its emphasis. Where like hospitals really are like, we're going to set aside this time.
Yeah.
We're not
Like it's
going
a
to
medical thing.
We're not going to measure the baby yet. We're not going to weigh the baby yet. Like we're not going to do anything until you have your time to try to breastfeed and do skin to
They
skin for
want
a
to see
couple
one
hours.
latch within the first 24 hours, and they would like for it to be in that first hour of skin to skin.
Wow.
And the skin to skin is supposed to reinforce to the baby that you're here and that we haven't abandoned you.
Yep.
And there's no reason to cry. And it sort of soothes its exit from the uterus.
And it also helps them regulate their body temperature, their own heart rate, and then they found that babies who do skin to skin have more regulated blood sugars.
Wow.
Right. So all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to breastfeed. So we learned that. We also learned that, essentially in the 4 hours that I spent staring at this PowerPoint and listening to this woman talk, with by the way, a room full of like sort of trashy moms, I do have to say, because it was Fall River.
Yeah.
And so there was like, these like big obese ones walking around like, like rubbing their stomachs and stuff.
Yeah.
And
There were women who, looking at them, I might have been a little concerned they were going to go out for a smoke break.
yeah. And the lactation nurse was like, look, I get it, guys. You know, when I first started, when they were talking about breastfeeding, when I was having my boys, I said, my breasts are only for my husband. What are you talking about? This is too weird. And I was like, that is like the weirdest thing.
That is pretty weird.
Now, I think she was just trying to sort of like
Yeah, she was trying to like
help the others.
Yeah.
But there were a few in the room that were like, yeah, I find this strange. Ew, get away from my breasts. I was like, this is the most natural thing.
That's what they're there for.
It's precisely what they're there for. So I'd be like, man, if you're hung up on that, like,
You got a ways to go.
because there's some immodesty coming.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some you know, very bodily things that go on. Like if you can't even get past like, here's my breast.
Yeah. You got a long way to go.
So I essentially learned that in the first couple of days, you've got a substance called colostrum. That is a yellow substance that comes out of the breast before your milk comes in. Your milk will not come in until several days after the baby is born.
Really?
Yes. Notice right now that Nina's breasts are very big.
Thank you.
I did notice casually.
Yeah, that's because her milk has now come in.
Yeah.
And she actually has to feed pretty regularly on top of for the baby's sake, but also so that she doesn't get engorged.
Yeah.
Or get clogged milk ducts and stuff, that sort of thing. The colostrum is really just antibodies and some like necessary nutrients for the baby in the first couple of days.
Yeah, there's like a lot of fat because there won't be a lot of it. So it tries to like sustain the baby until the milk comes in.
Really?
But yeah, then it's a lot of that immune, like they used to say before they started encouraging like everyone should breastfeed for 3 to 6 months. It's super important. But before that became a real big thing.
Yeah.
Like probably around when we were born, like 80s and even 70s, a lot of them would say you should at least try to get them the colostrum, like the first few days, even if you don't continue to breastfeed after that, try to get them that. And then they've gradually upped the recommendation for how long you should breastfeed.
Yeah. And I think with our baby, we found that she may not have really liked the colostrum very much, which I can sort of understand. I mean, it's
Or she just was starving and would get it and then be like, "There's nothing here. What do I do? I'm upset now."
Yeah.
So I learned that, and there's a real sort of science to the whole thing. The poops change drastically over the first 5 days.
Yeah, I've heard the tale of poops.
Based on the kind of nutrient they're getting.
Yeah.
So like the colostrum poop is like this black tarry stuff.
Yep.
And then like it eventually turns to yellow seedy is the term that we keep hearing.
Yep.
And then like a light brown and eventually like real human turds. But the big thing that they taught us was basically all we needed to know was like tickle the baby's upper lip with your nipple. And then when its mouth is large, shove as much of your breast into the child's mouth as possible.
As possible.
Because you want the nipple basically at the back of the throat.
Wow, really?
Yeah. That's a good latch. It will not hurt your nipple if you are successful at that. If the baby stays latched, that's what we have found. We get a good latch and then she sort of starts to fall asleep.
Yep.
Then she gets a shallow latch and then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And also it's the way that she's going to get the most amount of milk.
Yep.
Otherwise she'll just sort of like suck on it and not get that
Not
much.
get anything.
And then you could be feeding for an hour and she didn't really get enough.
Yeah, I've heard like a horror story about that in which a mother was breastfeeding and the child didn't get enough milk and they didn't know, you know.
Yeah, and then they keep like losing weight.
Well, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff is monitored very closely, I found.
Yep.
Because we had to go to the pediatrician 3 times in the first week. We had to visit the pediatrician where they get her weight and stuff. So they're checking her poop. They want you to keep a log of feeds and poops.
Yep.
And wet diapers as well. So like all this stuff is extremely monitored.
Yep.
So you'll know like, oh crap, like this mother isn't really feeding.
This thing isn't going right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's essentially what we learned at the breastfeeding class. And then we took what was called a baby boot camp, which was like $120 at the hospital.
Yeah, breastfeeding, a childbirth boot camp class.
It was all day, and they repeated a lot of the breastfeeding stuff. They said, seriously, there was a section on like, don't shake your baby.
I guess it has to be said.
Which was repeated in the hospital as well.
Yeah, on our way out was like...
We
I
essentially got
handouts.
retaught the entire class, both classes in the hospital.
Yeah.
They really do make sure that you know how to care for your baby when you leave.
I mean, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they should. And a lot of people are not nearly as intelligent as you guys,
Right.
so they need it kind of beaten
Especially
over the
in
head.
Fall River, yeah. So yeah, but it was like you might even get very frustrated by your baby because the baby will cry a lot and keep you up at night.
Yep.
Do not shake it. Not even if you're really mad. I'm like, no shit.
No
Sherlock.
shit, but I guess it has to be said.
Put it in its crib and walk away.
There's a lot. It was just a lot of general information on like, here's what contractions sort of feel like.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on in your body with a contraction. It's essentially the uterus hardening and then releasing and then hardening and releasing because it's starting to push the baby out.
Yeah.
So most of labor pains, for some reason, I don't know, because I'm a juvenile idiot. For some reason, I thought most of labor pain was actually passing the baby.
Yeah.
And like the vaginal pain.
Yeah.
But most of it's abdominal pain.
I didn't actually realize that either, but it makes perfect sense. Of course, it would be,
Uterine.
Yeah.
Nina, you keep talking. I'm just going to grab a drink. Do you want a drink?
I got one.
And even back pain, depending on the way that the baby's facing. Sometimes it's more like pain in your low back and tailbone. Because if depending on where the baby's head is, the head can be just slamming into your spine.
Yeah.
So I had that for like 2 minutes and it was terrible, but I didn't have it for the whole time.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's where the pain largely is. And really you only get like vaginal pain during like pushing.
Yeah. Interesting. It never occurred to me because I never really thought through the logistics.
Well, this podcast is for people who, like me, didn't have a lot of the details prior.
Yep.
So it's not just for our daughter. It's for people like us.
Yes.
Who might not have known. And frankly, it's maybe for women because I've met a lot of women who I've spoken to about this stuff who didn't know.
Yeah.
For some reason, again, I assumed that like from the time you're a little girl, you're told all of these things. They don't have a clue.
No.
Like I've met a lot of girls who don't know what colostrum is.
Yeah, I've not heard the term till today.
But you're a male. I guess I would have assumed that.
There were a lot of things that as a women's health nurse practitioner, I did not know.
Really? Give us some examples.
So not so much like the delivery stuff, but like the postpartum stuff. Like I didn't realize that I was going to get like crazy sweats for like weeks.
They don't talk about that.
Like I wake up drenched at night, and it makes sense now because they always talk about how much fluid you retain when you're pregnant.
Yep.
Well, you got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So like
and
not only
your body's working like overtime in many ways to try to get the fluid down.
For some reason, did not like occur to me. Like just and I'm like, oh, like I did not know that. That was not part of like my education in like women's health. Huh. Weird.
So, what else did they teach us in the class? When to have sex again and a lot of that sort of stuff. There was one
a lot of like your baby will look weird. It might have like acne. It might have patchy spots. Like don't freak out.
Here's what jaundice is. Here's what colic is. Here's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
A baby's skull, when it comes out, is made up of unfused plates.
I knew that one. Yep.
And that's why they can get cone head. Is because they, they also taught us that they passed around a little vacuum when sometimes you vacuum a baby out. That'll get relevant later.
I thought it would not be relevant at all. But
vacuum schmacuum.
But before C-sections became as popular as they were, you used to see a lot more vacuum deliveries and forceps deliveries where they would go in with like these big tongs. And
that's kind of, in my mind, the forceps delivery is kind of like a 50s
it's
trope.
way of the past, But it used to happen a lot.
So then the weeks ticked on, and the due date was June 17th.
Yep.
As you already know, spoiler, June 18th, Father's Day is when the
pretty close.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty spot on. But it was natural? It wasn't an induced labor?
We'll get into
Okay, all right.
That's really the main event.
Okay.
But as the days ticked on, as the last week leading up to the due date, and by the way, you tell people June 17th, everybody just hears June.
Yeah.
So when June 1st rolls around, they're like,
where's the baby?
They're like, why are you still here?
Yeah.
At work. And a lot of people asked, this is another important PSA type thing, time off, paternity and maternity leave. So Nina's taking 2 months, I'm taking 2 weeks, but then I'm going to take 2 days off a week until January.
Yep. Oh, wow. Until January.
Yeah. So, and it's June when we're recording this. So the Family Medical Act,
Family Medical Leave
Act, FMLA, all that, I mean, what that does is, at least federal, is it guarantees you 60 days of time off for a medical event, a qualifying medical event.
For yourself or a family member.
For yourself or a family member, where you will not lose your job.
But they're not obligated to pay you, right?
And as long as your company has more than 50 employees.
Yes. It's also based on company size.
Yep.
What's great about my place of employment, a college, is they will let us use our sick time. Now, sick time, you don't get to cash out when you leave the job.
Yep.
So you use it or you lose it.
Yeah.
And I was up to 90 days. I've been working there for a long time.
Yep.
So I was up to 90 days, and I could use 60 days as long as I get a doctor's note.
Wow.
To use all that time.
That's
So I
great.
might as well.
Yeah.
And you can use it any way you'd like, intermittently, whatever schedule you want to design.
That's so flexible.
Within a 12-month period.
Yeah.
Now, the FMLA guarantees that too.
Yeah.
That you can do it any way you'd like within the
Really?
12 months, but they don't have to pay you.
Yes.
And then after that, the college I work for was pretty flexible about like, and you can, then you have to establish with your boss, like if you want to do some work from home time or something like that, you can totally do all that, but that's up to your boss.
Yep.
The 60 days is, no one gets to say boo about it.
Yep.
Like that's just
That's
guaranteed
right.
to me.
Yep.
And my work was really cool about, they were like, and you know what, like if you end up getting called at work that day or they need you for more than an hour or something, you just let us know and we won't dock you that day.
Wow.
Like it really is.
That's
your
really
time.
good.
You're really supposed to be able to use that
Yeah.
time. HR is your advocate, was what they told me. So I was pretty pleased by that. And Nina gets something similar. That she got to use like a disability.
Yeah, so because I actually am the one delivering the kid, I paid into a short-term disability policy.
Yeah.
And it covers 6 weeks for like a normal delivery. So the time I'm taking off, the first 2 weeks, I had to use vacation time because it doesn't kick in for 2 weeks. Then it'll be the short-term disability policy. But the interesting thing was that I only qualified for it after I was there for a year.
Yeah.
And I had never thought about it because I thought, I don't know, like we're very libertarian, I guess. And I was like, well, if I don't get paid and I have to take unpaid time, I have to take unpaid time. I'm deciding to have a kid. This is my responsibility.
Yeah.
I didn't look into the policies at first. But then once I did get pregnant, I found out like, oh, this disability policy will cover you as long as you've been there for a year.
Yeah.
Well, I started at my current job May 23rd.
May 23rd.
So she could not come more than 3 weeks early.
Wow.
So if she came 3 weeks early or later, which
Yeah.
obviously ended up not being a problem, but I was like, then I'll be covered by this policy.
Oh, and that's relevant too. My sister with her 3 boys,
Yeah.
never went longer than 38 weeks.
Never went longer than 37 weeks, 37 and a half.
Okay.
37. And what's full term?
40.
40 is full term. Anywhere between 38 and 42 is considered normal.
Yep.
Like that's, you're not really going to have any
the
issues
due
with
date
premature.
is 40 days from your last menses.
But like her first son was like truly, I mean, not super, but truly premature at 36 weeks.
Yeah.
And then she had the other ones between like 37 and 37 and a half weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was early with all of hers, not dangerously, but early. And then our births, Nina and her brother were born a bit large. Nina's brother was 9 pounds.
Wow. It's a big baby.
I was like 8'8", and my brother was like 9'9", or I was 8'10", and my brother was 9'9".
And they
But I was born on my due date, totally naturally.
both of you were born without an epidural?
Yeah, I was born naturally on my due date, no epidural. My mom's water broke. They drove from Horseneck Beach, where they lived, to Charlton. I was born within 3 hours.
Wow.
My brother was 3 weeks late.
Yep.
Had to be induced. My mom had like all of the drugs and stuff to induce her. Wanted an epidural because she said the pain was so bad. But again, he was born within 3 hours. It was like too quick.
Yep.
Like by the time she asked for it, they were like, he's almost here.
Yeah.
So
Oh, and yeah, so my mom also no epidural, although a lot like Nina's mom, very like she requested the epidural, but it was too late
Yeah.
in the process. My mom also always told the story of she had Chinese food, which is rare for my mom. My mom doesn't eat Chinese food really. With both my sister and I, and that induced labor, according to her. My
That sounds like a wives' tale. But
there's a trillion wives' tales about
course.
which foods do it.
of course.
So as the date was approaching, Nina was really wanting to try to hit the due date as close as possible.
Yeah.
So we were trying everything. We went to the Indian place we go to.
Yep.
And we bought the spiciest shit in the world because they say spicy food does it.
Really?
And it was like Nina just burnt her mouth off trying to induce this baby.
I ate a bunch of pineapple. We did go for Chinese food.
My sister says pineapple juice.
I
too.
bounced on like an exercise ball. So what happens so besides the fact that her due date was on a weekend, which was just in a shallow way convenient for both of our works to like start the maternity leave.
Yeah.
Because I had planned for work. I see patients all day. I was scheduled up until the Friday, the day before my due date.
Yep.
And then had I gone over, I said, well, I'll work 4 hours a day. We won't schedule anyone till the day before. I'll see like kind of emergency appointments. But it was this real nebulous,
Yeah. Like, what are you going to
confusing
really
thing.
do with me? Yeah.
And then also, for anyone who doesn't know, when you start to get toward like the end of pregnancy, besides being physically uncomfortable, you just start psychologically being like, this is never going to end. Like, am I going to have to be induced? And once I am induced, then it comes with all these, is it going to be a cascade of complications and things? It starts getting like the pressure is on. Like once you're 40 weeks, they're going to start monitoring me more closely. And are they going to find something wrong?
Oh, you know how like all your life, it's like you give the bus seat to the pregnant woman and all that sort of stuff. Nina apparently, with sort of, I don't know, the I'm good vibe she gives off, she said that she was cut very little slack as a pregnant
I was never allowed like to cut lines in bathrooms. Like I stood in a lot of bathroom lines. I was never offered like seats. Like I might.
Would you have taken them, Nina, if they were offered to you?
Probably not. Well, toward the very end, I got so uncomfortable I might have, but definitely, or no, probably not. I probably would have suffered. Not that I wasn't uncomfortable, but it just didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
But it was just funny. I just never got any of those offers.
She also, as you know, didn't look all that pregnant until
quite a ways on.
Pretty much the end. Yeah. And she ate vegan the whole time. Very few people gave her crap for that, but she had a midwife, and she had sort of a backup doctor midwife. The backup was like, vegan, how do you get your protein? Which is like the thing you don't ask Nina.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like an amateur question.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Ooh, I don't want that one. I want the midwife."
So explain to me a little about midwives and what they do, because I kind of have had this historical 1600s view of midwives.
No, they're medical personnel.
Okay. It's like an RN, like a...
So they can be. So the ones that I see, being in Massachusetts, being in a really highly medicalized area, the two at the practice that I go to are certified nurse midwives. So they're basically nurse practitioners like myself. They've had like that same extra level of training.
Yep.
But they specialized in midwifery specifically.
Wow.
So they can follow you through your pregnancy, deliver your baby, to, normal to slightly complex pregnancies. If it gets really complicated, like you have bad diabetes or like a cardiac condition, or the baby has an anomaly, then they may refer you on to an obstetrician. They may say you really need a physician.
Yep.
But they can do the majority of the care, these two both work in the hospital.
Yeah. So they were they were there for the delivery and performed the delivery?
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
One of them did. So, there was a slight complication that they did bring in one obstetrician, but that was only like at the very end of the delivery. But then in other parts of the country, there are still
doulas,
non-RN midwives.
Yeah.
Like there are women who practice and who have been just trained and practice in like apprenticeship style and who attend home births.
That is my somewhat non-informed view of midwives.
and it will happen like in the Midwest, and it doesn't mean that they're not qualified. A lot of them will work with a physician who they can go to if it gets too complicated. In Massachusetts, we're so medicalized, and a nursing license is so important that like a lot of them won't attend home births and things like that.
Yep.
In other parts of the country, it's a lot easier to like have a home birth and have a midwife who's not a nurse attend it.
Yep.
So that when Frankie says I was considering home birth, I kind of was, but then it's so hard to find anyone who will do it, and then I didn't know how to vet them because it's not super common here.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen. But there's a wide range technically with the term midwife, but you're seeing a lot more of like these certified nurse midwives.
Interesting.
My sister's, by the way, a pediatrician who works in labor and delivery, and she was pretty against the idea of home birth. She was like, no, you want to have your insurance policy.
Well, but I mean, if something actually did go wrong, though, I mean, you're in an environment with presumably the most resources possible to help it get solved.
Yeah, and things can happen, as we found, but also there's like...
But the things that happened might have been caused by the fact that we were in the environment we were in.
Yeah, so we'll get there.
All right.
You kind of can't win.
So as far as carrying the baby, you gained a little more weight than you were supposed to, right?
Yes.
Even though you looked good the whole time.
I gained like 15 pounds more than I was supposed to. I gained 50 pounds. And
But she
I was only
started
supposed
small.
to gain.
She started 130 pounds, 5'5".
Yep.
Fit. And she
went up
you
to
went
180.
To like 180. Yeah. You're supposed to gain a pound a week?
You're supposed to gain like nothing in the first trimester, and then a pound a week in the second trimester, and then 1 to 2 pounds a week in the third.
We got two ultrasounds. 1 8 weeks, 1 12 weeks.
Yep.
The 8 week one looks like a bean.
We got 3. We got the 20 week one.
Oh, and then the 20
the
week
anatomy
one.
scan.
And that's the last one.
Yeah.
And supposedly, like, you can over ultrasound the baby. Like,
Really?
you actually don't want to do it too often.
They haven't found in any studies that there are like specifically negative consequences.
Yep.
But what's happening is they're using it so much now, and they really haven't studied it. And they're finding correlations between like speech delays and hearing problems with babies who have had frequent ultrasounds. Because a lot of women will kind of pursue them from like private clinics.
Yep.
And some doctors will be like doing them like weekly if they're concerned about something. And they're just like, this is unprecedented. We've never ultrasound babies this much before. We should take a step back. So they've recently released some things that are like, for a normal healthy pregnancy, there shouldn't be more than 2 or 3.
Wow. Interesting.
The 8-week one looks like a lima bean.
Yep.
And it's like too early to say anything about it, really.
Yeah.
The 12-week one looks like sort of a malformed child.
Yeah.
And they have this new technology. Like in movies, you always see sort of that side view. They have a new, like an alternate view now that tries to render a top-down 3D image of the. I think they actually call it 4D or something stupid.
Yeah.
And it looks more like a human that way, but it also looks more like an alien that way.
Yeah.
It looks kind of freakish. And then the 20-week one, we could see quite clearly that it was her. We could see her nose. We could see fingers. She was doing like an oy vey kind of a thing in utero.
Yep.
And
seeing her now, we realize she just looked like a skinny version of herself.
she does
Really?
look, she looked like her.
She's
Yeah.
put on weight, which is all she was supposed to do since then.
And they passed around the images like in the nurse's station. They all thought it was they were like, this is an adorable baby for a 20-week-old baby. And they were really insistent on that. Now, what else did you learn from the process of carrying a baby that you didn't know prior?
I don't know. I think I just didn't know the general level of discomfort kind of by the end. And again,
But you thought you could run until the end. You really can't run.
Well, some women do, and I was shocked at, for my level of fitness, the fact that like the week before we started trying to have a baby, I ran a half marathon. The fact that like by 20 weeks in, like halfway through, I had to walk. Like I couldn't run at all. That blew my mind. Because some women they slow down, they run a lot less. But a lot of half marathoners and marathoners are still lightly jogging 2 to 3 miles.
But around Christmas
occasionally.
time, we bought nice new treadmills and
Yes,
ellipticals.
you did.
And that was a godsend because she got to do the elliptical the entire time and walk on the treadmill during the winter months.
Yep.
Which we get a lot of snow and rain here and stuff. So that was a good thing for Nina. And she did use them until the bitter end.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So she'll go like, I couldn't even move at the end. It's like, no, you were doing the elliptical for like
That's true.
several miles. Yeah.
Really, the
Holy
last
cow.
week I didn't do much, but
Yeah.
So that's why, even though she gained a little extra weight, she looked really good. She stayed pretty far away from caffeine, just the occasional coffee. We don't smoke or drink as it is, so not a problem.
What else did they advise you against? Anything?
a lot of things that didn't matter because I am vegan, like
Yeah.
sushi,
Yep.
raw red meat, unpasteurized cheeses, which
Yep.
are pretty rare in the U.S. anyway, but
Yeah.
you can find it in like feta and brie and stuff. What else? Artificial sweeteners. Some people, some of the OBs and stuff will advise against it. Other people are like, yeah, probably not a big concern.
The thing we've always found about her vegan diet is it's like whatever faults you can find in a vegan diet, the advantages that just sort of inherently come with avoiding all kinds of those foods, most of the time they just severely outweigh the disadvantages of the vegan diet.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, like the only things with the vegan diet that could have been an issue is like raw sprouts you're not supposed to eat because they can harbor bacteria.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, more than like a lot of other vegetables. And then like really there's recommendations for getting enough like DHA, which you find in like fish and walnuts.
Yep.
And I'm obviously not going to eat fish. And they're really pushing like fish for pregnant women now. But again, only certain types of fish because some have mercury.
Oh, yeah.
So there's all kinds of recommendations about how you shouldn't eat too much fish. So I just got to avoid the whole thing.
Yep.
so as the date approached,
But in terms of other things that I kind of learned, the other interesting thing was that things that you kept thinking would be weird, because it came on so gradually for me, wasn't weird. Like when she would move a lot, or like when I'd be able to feel like certain parts of her anatomy where I was like, oh, this is definitely an elbow, or this is definitely a foot.
Oh, wow.
And you'd be like, wow, is that strange? And I'd be like, no, not really. Like things
it's
that
weird to be like, this is a foot or this is a butt.
Yeah.
like I thought things would be stranger than they were, but they kind of come on so gradually that you just get used to the
it's
idea.
just how it is.
And there's a lot of grabbing my hand and being like, quick, she's like making a lot of noise. And then I put my hand on her and she would just stop. It was like a ton of, and I asked my other father friends if they experienced the same thing. They were like, oh yeah,
Interesting.
totally.
She's a brat.
Certain kinds of noises would make her stir more.
Yeah, going to like a movie theater, like absolutely. Like during like
And certain foods too. Orange juice. You talk about your cravings.
oh yeah, so early on it was potatoes, any type of potato.
Really?
Cool in my book. I was like, let's
Yeah.
do this, which is funny because I didn't do the potato famine with you
Yes.
early on. You were doing the potato famine diet
day.
like the first week. Yeah, you only made it like a day, but we were going to do it for a while. But it was like the first couple of weeks that, again, I could be pregnant. And I was like, well, I probably shouldn't just eat potatoes if I might be pregnant.
Yeah.
But it turns out like all I wanted to eat was potatoes for the first like
Remember
few
the cottage
months.
cheese thing?
The cottage cheese was the only non-vegan craving
Really?
that I really had. That like I kept thinking about, probably because in my childhood, as we've mentioned on Box Mac, I ate a lot of like macaroni noodles like with cottage cheese.
Yep.
And I just wanted that like so badly.
Really?
There was a few other things like that where you're like, man, for the first time ever, I'd really love a
Oh yeah,
cheese something, you know?
yeah. Tuna fish sandwiches came up
Right.
late.
Tuna fish sandwiches.
Interesting.
When she smelled the tuna from the cookout,
Really?
she was super into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds great.
But orange juice, she drank a ton of orange juice.
I drank a ton of
And
orange
the baby
juice.
would move a ton when she drank orange juice.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and they
Strange.
say that like if you haven't felt the baby move for a while and you're worried, to either drink orange juice or something like cold and sweet like ice cream or.
And John, you were like the last major person in our lives we told about it because I was like afraid that you were going to be like, oh, there goes the neighborhood or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was not. We had talked about it before, and I wasn't.
We'd had
Super
discussion
keen.
because in your experience, like coworkers and stuff, it sort of just takes over someone's life.
Yeah. Your life becomes about the child.
In John's defense, John and I were on the same side.
Yes. And I was like, oh no, I'm never going to have a baby. And John's not helping.
I remember there was kind of an awkward conversation we had at Metro Pizza.
Yeah.
But like months later, Babby. So
Yes.
it's fine.
I felt really nervous about the whole thing. But I did I was worried you were going to think like, I don't know. But have you? I mean, EJ's done a pretty great job of staying involved.
Amazing job.
And he's 6 months in, and I'm already. We have a shoot planned for next weekend.
Yeah, I'm amazed by that. I thought it would be, like we go out for dinner every Sunday, right?
Yeah, you
I
thought
thought
that
that
was over.
I thought it was. I didn't think it was over. I thought it was. I was perfectly prepared for it to go on a medium term hiatus.
Right.
But here we are. We couldn't do last Sunday, obviously.
Yes, we were a little busy. I thought it was going to taper off too, but like 3 days in, once we had her at home, she gets quiet for a while. You get her between feedings.
Yeah.
And you put her in a car seat and you take her indoors.
Yep.
You wouldn't want
you
to.
start getting antsy, like you want to get out.
Well, that's a big part of like the postpartum depression thing. Is like you really and they teach us in the class too. They're like, get mom outside.
Yeah.
Because she'll feel like a cow. Like where they're just feeding like crazy, and she feeds like crazy. She does not want to be 7 pounds. She
Yeah.
wants to be much bigger.
Yeah.
And so she just eats like mad. But getting ahead of myself. So at my work, they were looking in at my cube all the time to see if I was still there. They just kept thinking I was going to disappear one day.
Yeah.
But I was like, guys, it's June 17th. And they're like, yeah, but they come early and stuff. So
They all think that, but again, like first babies tend to come late. And like
Yeah.
every morning I would walk
Yeah.
into work and they'd be like, you still here? And I'd be like, yes. Like, obviously.
Yep.
Oh, as far we never talked about the showers. My work ultimately did throw us a shower.
Yep.
Sort of a limited one.
Yeah. Did you get a lot of stuff?
Well,
We got a lot of money.
we got at least we got like $800 from that
Wow.
particular shower.
I
And
think
that was
that
just
that's
coworkers.
a much better way to do it than trying to pawn off stuff when you were even doing a gift registry.
My sister was done with her babies pretty much, so we've gotten chairs and swings and clothes.
Like,
and-
so we're in the room in your living room, and there are 3 main baby areas here. We've got a.
I'd say this is pretty uncluttered.
No, it's very uncluttered. But
Yeah.
how many of these? There's like a fancy swing.
100%.
There's like, is it all from your sister?
The only thing that's not is that little
Bassinet.
bassinet thing that is supposed to be able to go in your bed so they can sleep in your bed with you.
Oh, really?
That's the only thing that I bought in here. But that boppy pillow, the boppy pillow sitting on me, the rocker swing, the other swing,
Yep.
all that carrier that's on top of the chair.
I didn't even notice that.
These are all from his sister.
Yeah.
There you go.
She gave us a ton.
That's wonderful.
I bought a lot of like cloth things. Like
Yeah.
I bought we did buy a crib
Yep.
because they say you should buy a new crib. We did buy a car seat.
Yep.
And then I bought
With
a
you.
lot of
Yes.
Yeah. that was it.
I would.
And then I bought a lot of like linens, like burp
Yeah.
cloths and her sheets and like sheet protect and like mattress protectors and things like that.
And then there was sort of a gift trickle, I would say, where some people just can't they can't not
They
give you a
can't. Yeah,
gift.
yeah. I resisted the temptation.
Oh, thank you. But we got some nice cute stuff. A lot of clothes. Nina's mom went on a bit of a clothes purchasing bender.
I got a ton of clothes from like coworkers, like
Yeah.
clothing like we will not use because it's
Really?
It's like dresses with like matching headbands, and there's like bows and like.
And are they for really little babies too?
They are. They're for like 0 to 3 months. But I can't imagine putting her in anything but a onesie. Like it's just all we can do to like slap something on her.
You need easy access to the butt.
Yeah, you gotta have easy access to all points.
Yeah,
and she in 1 week has had 2 major like just pee all over herself, mess herself up situations.
Yeah,
which you can expect.
Of course. I mean, she's new to it.
I'm not really like I didn't have a baby to like play dress up.
Of course. I mean, some people definitely.
I'm noticing
do,
that people do.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I'm too tired. I don't want to spend my time that way.
It's just not the way we want to be spending our time.
Yeah.
So and then Nina's work didn't have quite a shower, but more like a here's a bunch of gifts out of nowhere kind of thing. So she went home with a lot of stuff, and my coworkers were really nice about it too, and gave us a bunch of money. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's that, and then we started to really try to induce. We did the spicy food. We went to Oriental Pearl and got a bunch of Chinese food. Her midwife said pressure points for foot massage. So we tried that. We researched pressure points for foot massage. And I did a lot of that while we watched the movie Junior, where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets pregnant. Have you ever seen that movie?
I have not seen it, but it is
early 90s,
DeVito.
directed by Ivan Reitman.
There's some like prosthetic things that stick out in my mind. Like the promo poster was him with like the baby bump.
Yeah, like and he's like looking at camera like,
Yes.
how did this
Like,
happen?
oh geez.
But here's the thing about that movie. I think that they shopped it. I think when they pitched it, they were like, how funny would it be to emasculate Arnold to the point that he would have a baby? And they're like, greenlit, that sounds funny. Well, I think once you actually have to write a screenplay where it's like, well, how does a man get impregnated? The movie just ends up getting crazy and stupid.
Yeah.
Like, this is the plot of that movie.
Okay.
He works for a place that's trying to solve like pregnancy complications for women.
Okay.
And they're testing them on apes.
Yeah, he is a researcher at an academic like university working on a medication to reduce the risk of miscarriage.
Okay.
And he has a medical counterpoint, Danny DeVito, who is an obstetrician who's kind of like working with the study.
Yeah. Okay.
And Danny DeVito's like, hey, why don't we just try it on you? And he's like, okay, that's fine. And they decide that he's just going to sort of like...
Because they're about to lose funding. So they're doing like this last-ditch effort to get a human trial out.
Yeah.
And they decide that, they're like, we'll just sort of go first trimester and then we'll terminate.
Yeah.
You're just to prove some point. And then like Arnold, of course, falls in love with the baby and brings it to term. But they never explain how he's growing a baby without a uterus.
Who the parents are? Is that ever covered?
Well,
It's Emma Thompson's
It's
egg.
young Emma Thompson.
Young Emma Thompson.
They inject her egg into his abdomen.
Okay.
It makes no fucking sense.
And then like when it's time for him to like have like I guess it was near 40 weeks anyway, and I guess their plan was always a C-section. But he starts having like pain and complications, and they're like, "Oh, the baby's all tangled up in your intestines." Like, so they have to do an emergency C-section.
The movie makes no sense
because they never. Yeah, there was no. So again, no uterus. I'm assuming no placenta. I don't know how they can't
grown
grow.
in his like in an empty space.
So,
it's a freakish movie.
It sounds. I never kind of thought of it like
because once it's like, okay, well, we have to deliver it. It's like, well, of course it'd be a C-section. It's not gonna like come out of his scrotum. Like
Frankie had never seen the movie. I had seen it.
Yeah.
He's watching it, going, "This movie's sick. This is a sick
it
movie.
was true. Like it was a movie gone awry.
This is a sick film."
What is it rated? Just out of curiosity.
I think like PG-13.
I think PG-13.
Could there be like kids who saw it when they were 13 who think that like a lot of the details are actually about what pregnancy is?
I guess so, because it sort of it lends itself to that whole like a baby grows in a woman's tummy.
Yeah.
As opposed to like
Yeah.
so.
Then, like,
As opposed to any kind of
he has
understanding.
cravings and eats a lot, and he's very emotional.
Yeah.
And
yeah, all the kind of like
and of course, like they have to
checklists.
have the scene in the movie where he dresses up in drag and like walks around.
Of course.
Which I think was the whole point of making the film, was to get
Yeah.
him in drag and have him but
funny. A
They had
couple
to
funny
explain
scenes.
all these other horrible medical things to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, like who decided to like follow through on this idea? Because I'd be halfway through the script. I'm like, I don't think we can do this.
I mean,
it's too dumb.
It sounds like a really funny one-liner, and then
Yes,
you gotta like
that's what
expand
what
yeah.
it was. So I was doing foot massage while we watched that, and we also did watch We watched a couple other movies along the way. We watched Father of the Bride Part 2.
Yep.
Which the only major, which is a funny movie by the way.
seen
Steve
it.
Martin Short, but the major discovery was the baby workout.
yeah.
There's a scene where Martin Short is dancing with Diane Lane
Diane Keaton,
and the daughter, and he's doing something called
they're both pregnant.
It's just Martin Short at his Martin Shortiest.
Yeah.
Doing this like aerobic dance called the baby workout.
Yep.
And I don't know. I don't think I can describe. I'll just that'll
be a clip.
That'll be the clip. So we've been singing the baby workout song throughout most of this pregnancy, and also 9.5 weeks with Hugh Grant you watched, right? Or not 9.5 weeks, 9 months.
9 months.
9 months.
9.5 weeks is different.
Not very long.
There's no baby.
That's the Josh Hartnett movie. So, Saturday came.
So,
which was our due date.
Well, so first, there was Friday where we went to my last midwife appointment before my due date.
Yep.
And so that was the first of kind of the medical induction things.
Yeah.
So I had a perfect pregnancy until then. Like my blood pressure was great, her heart rate was great, everything was awesome.
Yeah.
This time we go in, my blood pressure's up, her heart rate's a little down, which is babies should be running like 150, and she was like 120.
Yep.
So my midwife was like, "All right, we'll kind of watch you. I want to do some blood work. I want to do an ultrasound on Monday. And if your blood pressure's still up, depending on how things look, we might induce like the middle of next week."
Yeah.
Which is the first piece of kind of bummer news for Nina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking like slippery slope if I get induced.
Yeah.
So
And she's right.
yeah. So she does this procedure that's called a membrane strip, where she basically like separates. She goes in and separates like my amniotic sac like from my cervix, like with her finger.
Yeah.
And for some women, that causes you to release a bunch of hormones, and then like within 24 to 48 hours, you're more likely to go into labor. Doesn't happen for everyone. It's kind of like a 50-50 shot, depending on how, if your body's kind of ready or not.
Yeah.
But she does that. It's fairly painful, but I'm like,
She's not a pain.
but I'm like, that seems fairly benign in terms of like the interventions that they could do. And and I didn't want to end up with like a full-on induction the next week.
Yep.
So that was Friday. And then we spent Friday night and Saturday doing all these wacky ass food and
Right. And it was starting. We were just kind of living our lives mostly.
Yeah.
And Saturday we were going right through Saturday.
Were you starting to get concerned about the situation?
No, because we knew that. Well, we knew that it was normal to go 42 weeks.
Yep.
Which was going to kill Nina because she was like, I need to get this baby out of me.
Yeah.
But two, we were just told by the midwife that we weren't going to go. It was Friday, and we weren't going to go past Wednesday.
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was happening.
Yeah, so in one way it's relieving. I can see why there are a lot of inductions and everything. It's very easy to convince a 40-week pregnant woman to induce.
Yeah.
Because she's so uncomfortable. She's starting to get scared. They're starting to scare her by like these little changes. And probably my blood pressure would have amounted to nothing. But like I heard that and I was like, okay, well, hopefully I'll go into labor naturally before then. And if I don't, by Wednesday, it's over no matter what. So
that was kind of a relief, I suppose.
To have a plan in place.
So I started.
I never called to cancel that ultrasound appointment on Monday. Yeah, I feel I just no-showed for that. I feel bad.
So I don't know. I kind of started to like fantasize in my head, like, well, what's this going to be like? It's like, when is this happening? Is this happening? And I was getting a lot of texts from my family being like, any news? And we were just like, do we tell them like, well, we got our membrane stripped?
Yeah. Like
what's the level of detail?
Like how much information does like his dad really want?
Yeah.
Or do I just say like, not yet, but I would have told you.
Yeah. Like obviously.
Yeah. Although Nina was trying to encourage me, she was like, look, like labor can go on for a long time. It's not like in the movies.
Yeah. It's not like 30 minutes and you're done.
My sister like was 3 hours, and I don't know, like a lot of our family members, like it was real quick and really it's sort of easy for them. So I had my hopes up, and we always had this. We always had this joke about Nina having like birthing hips and stuff,
being Polish and push him out.
And but she was like, we might not want to tell people right away. We might want to let labor go on for a bit before we start talking about it. And there was, and they tell you, they advise you in the birthing class, like just keep to no more than 2 support people in the medical room, in the delivery room.
We told John this. We offered John that second spot at the end of the last dinner we had. I said he could be the second person.
Don't have any visitors for quite a while until after delivery and stuff. So they were sort of like, well, what Nina's mom was like, do I come in there? And it was like, no, thanks. And I now that I went through it, I can't imagine anybody besides the husband being there because it's just like it's an ordeal.
Yeah, of course.
So, moment of truth, main event. 4 a.m. she wakes me up. She's been having contractions.
4 a.m. on Sunday. Yeah.
On Sunday, Father's Day.
After kind of having our normal Saturday.
She's been having contractions since 10 p.m. the previous night.
Yep.
Nina had a lot of sleepless nights, or she had this like at 3 a.m. for some reason. She'd wake up and she wouldn't be able to go back to sleep.
Between 2:30 and 3, it was pretty normal for me to wake up and be up for the night.
And I just sleep through the whole thing, and I find out later that she had a miserable night or something. You know?
Yeah.
So she wakes me up. She's like, "Hey, could you stay up with me? I think I'm having, I'm starting to have these like major contractions." And I saw in the instructional video in the birthing class that the husband's job is that she's going to be in so much pain from the contractions that it's the husband's job to time them.
Yeah.
Because what matters is how long between contractions you have. So you have one, and then as it shortens, that's how you know that the baby is sort of pushing its way out.
Yep.
And that's when you know to go to the hospital. And a lot of people go to the hospital way too soon.
Yeah.
This is stuff that I did not know.
Yeah.
I thought, based on movies, that everyone's water breaks. Did you think that too?
I thought it was a critical indicator step.
Yes.
Like it means that the baby is imminent.
Well, only 10% of women's water break.
10%?
Yes.
Well, 100% of women's water will break at some point.
Sure.
Yeah.
But only 10% is at the start of labor. Is like it's the first sign, or it's like an early
honey,
sign.
my water broke.
It's such a movie trope that when a woman is about to give birth, the water breaks.
And yet, we knew this, and we knew that it's only 10% of, or we learned it at some point. I knew it, but Frankie learned it.
I'm saving them.
But
everybody who's listening to this so much time.
But Frankie's mom, her water broke with both.
Right.
Yep.
My mom with me. I mean, again, my brother was induced, so no. His sister, 2 of the 3 pregnancies, her water broke first.
Yep.
So we're like this incredibly rare thing.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen that often. Has happened to every
Everyone.
woman in our family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had this idea that we were going to watch Breaking Bad, like the whole series all over again.
We would just hang out at home leisurely, because if your water doesn't break, you don't have to go in for a long time.
Yeah.
And the reason
we
that
were
they
just
want you to
gonna-
come in if your water breaks is because now the amniotic fluid is unsealed, essentially.
Yes. So
and
things need to be.
Yeah,
They need
get
to
an
start going,
infection.
because if
Yeah.
you don't start progressing, they're going to induce you. They're going to make the baby happen. And if
Yeah.
you get really close, basically they give you, you're on the clock now.
Yes.
You have 18 hours.
Yep.
And if it's 15 hours in, they're going to give you a C-section.
Yep.
Like that's how it's going to go. So for that reason, some women, the riskier ones, suggest that you do not tell the hospital that your water broke, and that you just chill.
And then you just hang out at home, let labor happen.
let labor
if
happen.
you develop a fever, or if you start like feeling,
Because you're
bad.
trying to avoid terrible things that are about to happen.
Okay.
So, she's telling me that she's been having contractions.
Yeah.
They seem to be about 3 to 4 minutes apart.
Yep.
You're supposed to go in. The rule is 4-1-1. 4 minute
when they're
4
4 minutes
minutes
apart,
apart.
lasting a minute at a time for over an hour.
for over an hour, which has
Okay.
been happening from 4 to 5. So I'm
Yep.
like, oh, it's probably time to, they tell you to have a bag ready and stuff. And so Nina's very prepared. So we're ready. I'm kind of getting ready to go. And then we're like, oh, let's wait until 6 and let's wait until 7. And then, operating hours aren't until 8, because you'd have to go through the emergency room if you go there earlier
Yeah.
than 8.
Yeah.
So we're like,
And
let's just go through the main entrance.
And we're fine. And she's, breathing through these contractions, and they suck, but not too bad. And
Yeah.
But early on at 5:30 is when I was like, I think my water actually did break.
she's like, I think my water broke. And I'm like, what do you mean you think your water broke? In the movies, they always know. They
Yeah.
come out dripping.
In the movies, it's a horrible mess, and it's embarrassing.
Yes.
And she's like, I can't tell if it's pee, or I really don't know if I'm just peeing myself or what.
Pregnancy is magical, is what I'm getting at.
She's like, she's like, I can tell you right now, I'm leaking all kinds of colors, and I really don't know if it's water broken or what. And I'm like, so will they be able to tell us? She's like, yeah. So I'm like, well, it's probably time to go to the hospital, yeah. And now it's like 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
and we call and we describe it to somebody over the phone who's not taking it very seriously, because again, a lot of women go in way too early.
Yep.
And they're like, they have to. So it's Sunday now.
Yeah.
So she's not going to get her midwife. She's going to get the other one who didn't understand the veganism.
Yeah.
So she's unhappy about that. But it is Father's Day, and that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, it looks like we're going to have my kid today. But I also don't know that.
Yeah. It could be,
And so we call, and they go, yeah, come in. And we're like, let's delay a little longer. Like anything we can do to delay going into the hospital.
Yep.
And we could have delayed much longer, by the way.
So what was your motivation to delay?
There's no reason to just, if things are just going to progress at their own rate.
Yep.
There's no reason to go do that at the hospital.
Yeah.
Where you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're really waiting for to get to the phase where you can have this baby is dilation. So getting to that famous 10 centimeters.
That's
Yep.
your cervix dilating.
Yep.
So that's internal to you. your cervix,
the mouth of the uterus.
the mouth of the uterus getting big enough that the baby can pass.
Yep.
So you're going from basically closed to 10 centimeters,
Yep.
which is that's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people know that. And then also
Those are the contractions making that happen.
and then also what's called a facing, because your cervix starts off like a cork and it has to get like really thin in addition to getting really wide.
Yep.
So it's kind of like, kind of the longer you kind of can delay, like you don't want to sit in the hospital if it's just going to slowly keep opening up and you're going to sit there for 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah. What's the point?
If you can manage the pain, you don't really have to be there. So we were kind of delaying, being like, well, maybe by the time we get there, if we wait a little bit longer, I'll be like 4 or 5 centimeters and we'll cut down on the amount of time that we're there. Because at home, you have no idea where you stand. You just know how often the contractions are.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So we ended up going to one of our favorite coffee places called Pink Bean in Fall River. Mm-hmm. And I got a sandwich and she got a coffee and we're a decaf, of course. And we're kind of laughing at the idea that like no one in this restaurant knows that like we're headed to go have a baby right after this.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of delaying, and we kind of slowly get up and head over. And Nina's giving me directions to the hospital. And we walk in, and they don't send you right to delivery.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I also thought that that the man gets into scrubs, and the woman is carted around in a wheelchair, because every movie has that, right? Neither are true.
No, I don't think I had either of those particular.
I feel like every sitcom ever, it's like the man has to get into scrubs, and she's immediately put in a wheelchair and carted her out.
Yeah, I those are two conceptions I didn't have.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you know.
I did.
Okay.
I don't know if I thought that was going to happen here.
Yeah.
but it's definitely what I've seen.
Yeah.
And even my mom told me that my dad had to get into scrubs and stuff.
Really?
She also told me that he didn't. That my dad didn't know whether or not he could go in with her because he was going to like pass out possibly.
Really?
He was worried he was going to pass out.
Wow.
And I think I saw a lot more than he did.
Yep.
Upcoming. But no, I was just in my Nintendo controller shirt.
Yep.
And Dickies. And Nina was in her comfy clothes.
Yep.
So they sit us down and they don't know quite what to do with us yet. We're telling them that we think that maybe the water's broken. Mm-hmm. So they was it labs? How did they test you?
So they do a swab. They do a vaginal
Right.
swab, and they can tell if
That
it's
hurt.
amniotic fluid, but that has to go down to the lab. Well, that part didn't hurt, so that has to go down to the lab. So like, we'll take this. It'll be about 20 minutes. We can tell you if your water's broken. Then they do an exam to tell you about your dilation and everything.
Right.
And I'm only 2 centimeters.
She's only 2 centimeters. She's like, oh, we're really not
you're
progressing
Yeah.
much.
So now at this point, when they tell me I'm only 2 centimeters, now in my head, I'm backtracking. I'm like, I hope my water hasn't broken.
Yeah.
So I can go home and labor
she's
at
out
home.
of luck. So they send us onto the floor to walk.
To do a walk of shame.
And there's not much space to walk. There's two hallways.
It's a tiny unit, and we can't really leave the unit. Like, we can't go walk around the hospital.
Because there's sort of big red doors. It's like, don't pass beyond this
But you
point.
couldn't like exit the building at this point.
No.
not permitted.
Not
No,
until we
they
had
put
our
her in
lab-
scrubs. She had like her ass crack hanging out and stuff.
They put me in a hospital gown.
Not
Because-
scrubs, gown.
Because they want to wait and see if I'm ruptured, if I have
Yeah.
my
And they
water
figured,
broken.
hey, you might as well get your pregnancy on the road.
Yeah.
And so they started making us walk, and she can only walk so fast. She had to go kind of slow, and she was still getting these contractions. I was still timing them. And we passed by a couple who had a little teeny baby in a little teeny cart. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey guys, congrats. And we were like, congrats to you. Did you have to do the walk of shame? And they're like, yep, all day yesterday we had to do the walk of shame. and then
The walk is just supposed to help you induce,
Yeah.
like
It's
continue
supposed to help you progress.
I think it's meant to make you fuck off while they wait for results.
Yeah.
So they interrupt us about 50 minutes in. Oh, and this is after there was a cute little girl who gave us "It's a Girl" lollipops from the kitchen area, and they were like, if you have to sit,
because she just had a little sister. Born.
she just had a little sister. It was cute.
That's cute.
They're like, here's a waiting area if you want to sit here. Here's also a kitchen area which has a lot of great things in it, and it had nothing in it. It had
some graham crackers and some jelly.
yeah, and
What?
And it was that was about it, wasn't it?
That's what I had at like 2 or 3 a.m. a couple nights later. So that's all I found in there.
So then they said, hey, guess what? You're ruptured. Your water broke.
Yeah.
So it's off to delivery
So we're
with
gonna
you.
stick you in a delivery room.
Yeah. So, but things are a little out of sequence then, right?
Right. So she's not very dilated and her water's broken.
Yeah.
So what that means is
This could be a long haul, but they won't let it be a long haul.
They won't let it be a
So now
long
I'm
haul.
like, okay.
So they bring in the floor nurse, and she's not very good. And remember, she was like she put in an IV on Nina because they were going to start IV fluids. and it stung Nina bad. Like the IV wasn't put in right. And they also I don't know, they kept asking us the same survey questions, John, over and over and over again.
Like what questions were you asked?
Like
basic health questions, any thyroid problems, any
the same
STD
fucking
history.
questions.
By the same people?
No, they would send in new people to ask the same questions over and over.
But always on the same electronic medical record.
Yes.
Like it's not
It was so
like
obnoxious.
there were forms or anything.
There was one hilarious one where they were like, they read it so matter of factly. They were like, do you feel like all is lost and life is hopeless? And it was just a question of about depression.
Yeah. Do you feel like life?
Yes, no.
Do you feel hopeless and life is not worth living?
Yeah.
Just picture some I can't quite grasp why it sounds even just so far uncoordinated.
It was. It was
Until shit got real. Then it got coordinated.
well, so even the midwife was on call. She
Yeah.
wasn't there. So anytime any major decision had to be made, which the RNs were really not empowered to make decisions. And that also meant we weren't getting, they would just be told to do something, they'd go do it. They weren't given the rationale behind it. So if we wanted the rationale behind it, we had to call the midwife. And so it was.
So was the midwife directing from the wings?
Yes,
kind of?
from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at one point I looked like a problem patient because they come in to draw labs on me and I'm like, which labs are we drawing? And they tell me, and they were literally the ones that I had Friday. Remember
Friday.
she sent me for labs and I was going to get an ultrasound. I was like, oh, I just had those Friday.
I was like,
would those have changed? If they've changed, if they could change by this point, I understand getting them again.
Yeah.
If it's useless, I don't want to get them again.
Yeah.
And then so they call the midwife. They make me talk to the midwife like I'm in trouble now. And I'm like, oh no, I just wanted to know, I don't know how quickly that particular level can change. And if it can change, let's do it. I didn't know if you knew that I had them Friday.
It was like she'd already gotten stuck a bunch of times. And I was like, you're going to do, I can't even get blood taken once.
Yeah.
I pass out.
I had 6 sets of labs that day.
6 sets of
I
labs.
just had tape all up and down my arms.
Yeah, she still has sticky residue on her. Yeah. From last week.
Is that normal to do 6 sets of lab during?
There's some abnormal stuff that was going on.
Yeah, some stuff happened.
So, yeah, so that was kind of pissing me off a little bit, and the bad. Oh, and then their medical records just had you completely wrong. They had
I had a thyroid problem,
diabetes,
and, cancer.
Even though you
cancer.
answered it 83 times.
Yeah, they pulled up one record on her that was just utterly wrong.
Yeah.
It was scarily wrong.
That's concerning.
I thought so.
I understood the problem later because I used to work for South Coast. It was an early Epic problem where they didn't realize that if there was a negative, you should leave it blank. But you had a yes and a no button, and they would hit no, and that would bring up the list of possible problems, just like as if you would hit yes.
Yeah.
And it would log problems that you didn't have.
It's like a double negative thing.
Oh, so it was like a technical problem.
It was a technical problem that probably happened
6 years ago.
when we switched to Epic, probably a couple years ago. I must have gone to see my
Interesting.
primary care provider for my
And
first
they
physical in
filled it
years,
out.
and they filled it out, and it all stuck there. And then I
wow.
haven't really had.
They said no to things instead of blank.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that caused them to become to
positive.
appear as yeses.
Yeah, no with detail.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So then Nina's contractions started to get kind of nasty.
Well, because they started.
Okay, right. So there's this drug called Pitocin.
Yeah.
It's a form of oxytocin, the love drug.
Yep.
Which
The love hormone.
the love hormone, which makes your cervix dilate during pregnancy. And they give you, they basically are like, so we'd like to start the Pitocin. And the midwife actually showed up for this part.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nina?
Yeah.
And Nina really didn't.
She was like, I can just let you kind of sit here on your own and see how you progress and check in 5 hours. Or we can start the Pitocin, and she's like, and get this going and deliver this baby today.
And Nina's like, I better, because if I don't, if for some reason I don't progress,
Yeah.
and it becomes too late, they'll do a C-section on me.
Yep.
And we really want to avoid C-section.
Because it's now 10 a.m. I have technically been in labor in my head for 12 hours.
Right.
Yep.
And they're telling me I'm only 2 centimeters. Now, truthfully, that doesn't matter. And rational Nina knows that you can go from 2 centimeters to 10 centimeters in 2 hours. It can
But what
happen.
if you don't?
Yeah.
But
There were no indicators that progress was going to start getting
But I'm
made.
also like, what if I don't? So what if I go for 5 hours, then have to do the Pitocin anyway, but now I don't have enough time.
Yes, and
I
then
end up with a
you don't
C-section.
get dilated, and then
The problem with Pitocin is that it causes miserable contractions.
Intense, hard contractions fast.
Because it accelerates
Yep.
everything. And so indeed, but Nina was like, "You'll bring it on gradually, right?" She was like, "Sure."
Is that drug also meant to increase dilation?
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's going to increase.
Oh, because contractions result.
Yes. Yeah. So she starts having like now the pain is as the Pitocin comes on.
Yeah.
Is becoming a little scary.
Yeah.
Like she's in a lot of pain.
And the problem with Pitocin as well is once you take it, because they know it makes the contraction so intense, is you have to wear a fetal monitor, like this band around your belly that watches the baby's heart rate. So you can't really move around.
Yep.
So if walking or dancing or sitting on a ball or all of these things that they teach you in birthing boot camp class
sit on a medicine ball.
would have helped with the pain, I can't really do that.
Yeah,
now,
you could just lay there.
Now, later on, I have a nurse who's more receptive to help me do these things. But my initial nurse, like Frankie was saying, wasn't very good and would come in every second that the monitor wasn't in the perfect position and basically just wanted me to lay there in bed.
It's like a sensor that sits on the belly.
Yeah.
That gets the baby's heart rate.
Yep.
And Nina was finding that being in any way laying down was really causing the contractions to be a lot worse.
Yep.
There was a rocking chair right next to the bed.
Yeah.
And Nina was like, "Hey, can we put the footrest down? Can I recline up? Like,
can I sit on a ball?"
For some reason, this nurse was being really hard about it.
This nurse was like, "No, not really. You can't really do that."
Yeah, she was like, "You can't." And the answer was no to almost everything that I was asking. And like I was asking, like, "Hey, what happens next?"
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to know what happens next.
Yeah. What's the next sequence of
Yeah.
events?
Yeah,
And
now,
they wouldn't
that
tell me
she's
that.
sitting here in a lot of pain, like, what's the next thing we do?
Well, right, because how long is she going to be in pain for, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, "When are you going to check her, how dilated she is next?" And they're like, "Well, we really don't check that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "Well, now that she's ruptured, if we were to check that again, we would be introducing risk of infection, and we want to limit that as much as possible. So we're just kind of seeing how long between contractions." And I was like, "Okay, cool. How are you?" And I was looking for the monitor. There's one thing called Toco that just had sort of a rating. And we later found out it was only rating not the intensity. That's based completely on Nina's description.
Yeah, just the frequency.
Just the frequency. And so like, I'm not getting good info. Like, I don't know how Nina's progressing, and I'm trying to advocate for like, well, can we get her moving? She's also hooked up by this point to so many IVs and cabling that she sort of, there's no slack for her to move.
Yeah. They basically told us that they really wouldn't check until I asked for pain medication. They were like, we check when you ask for pain medication so that we know if it's appropriate to give it or not. So I'm like, so I just have to.
We ain't doing pain medication.
Yeah, so I'm like, so I have to sit here in raging pain until indefinite time, like before.
And they were going to increase the milligram dose of Pitocin 2 milligrams per hour until they get to 20, and that would be their maximum.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nina's pain is coming on.
Yeah.
The nurse changes over. And it ends up being the nurse that taught our baby boot camp class.
Yep.
So somebody we know. And she's much more on her game. And she's much more, I don't know, experienced.
Yeah. She's like, let's get you in a different position. Let's get you up. Let's get you in the chair.
We're like, hey, we're asking all the same questions all over again. She's like, oh, of course. So like just bad info from the last one.
Yeah.
Just shitty.
Yeah.
And I also could tell the other one was like covering for a different one.
Yeah.
I was like, this sucks. So we got her in a rocking chair, and that alleviated her pain for a little while. But she's really breathing through them, and it's just starting to really kind of hurt.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where it's like starting to be way too much.
Yeah.
Like she's rating her pain at a 9 or a 10. And they're saying like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 would be worst pain you've ever felt, the feeling of having your arm cut off. And Nina's going, yeah, that. And Nina's not really a whinger. Yeah. So that's like, uh-oh, like her pain's high.
Around this point, I've kind of lost track of like, I get back in bed at some point, and I've lost track of the fact that I'm hyperventilating. Like I didn't realize it. Like at some point the nurse comes in and tells me like, you need to slow down your breathing because like you're going to hyperventilate.
Right.
And I didn't even realize I was doing it. I thought I was very calmly trying to breathe through contractions. But then after she tells me that, I realized that I'm just like panting.
And I had this idea in my head that I was going to take out my laptop and we could maybe watch something together and get her and distract her. Yep. I had some goldfish for myself just to snack on.
That's how a normal labor, like that's how an unmedicated labor might have been.
And Nina couldn't even like fathom the idea of like watching something. She's just getting through every minute. Yep. So I was like, well, Jesus, like without doing an epidural, which we don't want to do, for all the reasons your class told us not to, what are her options? And they're like, well, there's an IV pain med called Stadol that will definitely take the edge off. Within 15 minutes, it'll sort of really taper it down.
It'll wear off fast. It'll wear off within a couple hours, but
that'll take the edge off. So I was like, well, shit, yeah, do that. So they're like, yeah, the only thing is it'll make her pretty stoned. And
So she's definitely got to be in bed.
yeah, and it'll make the baby a little stoned too. And they're getting the baby's heart rate the whole time, which was around 135 to 140, which is perfectly normal.
She stayed perfect.
No distress on the baby.
Through all of this, she stayed great.
Yeah.
Which is good because that is what buys you a C-section. If the baby's not doing well, they're like, well, we got to get her out.
Gotta get it out.
So they give the stuff to Nina. And before long, Nina's like, I'm like, hey, is the pain any better? And she's like, yeah, it's a little bit better, but different. And I'm like, and she's getting stoned. And I'm like, well, what do you mean different? She's like, it's like a cartoon. She's like, it's like I'm in the Cartoon Network. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she's like it's like the same amount of pain, but like rounded edges. I'm like, oh boy.
Oh boy.
And then I'm like, how you feeling now? And she's like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty good. She was doing a Brooklyn accent. I'm doing pretty good.
That must have been bizarre.
It was very strange to go from the horror of her previous pain to a Brooklyn construction site. Hey, I'm doing all right. How's Mickey? How's your mother? Then she starts making sounds during the contractions for the first time. And it sounds to me like a pregnant woman.
Yeah, I started growing.
Or like a woman laboring.
Yeah.
Which I've heard in movies.
Yeah.
Now she sounds like, and I'm like, okay, well, that's normal probably. Maybe it even means she's progressing.
It's getting there.
Oh, and when they checked her for dilation before the Stadol, she was up to 3 centimeters. Ooh. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. And now it's probably like 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so this goes on until about 3 o'clock, where she's on the Stadol. It's not as bad, but it starts to wear off. And every new contraction gets a little worse until she's basically screaming through the contractions. And, all up and down the floor, you can hear it.
Yeah.
And she's embarrassed by it, but she doesn't care. She can't think about it. She can't think about anything.
I can't think about it in the moment. In the very brief in-between time, which to me only felt like seconds in between contractions, I had it in my head like, I won't scream this time. I'll groan. I'll do moaning, which is actually supposed to help pain. I know in my head the screaming isn't helping the pain anyway. And then the minute the contraction comes on, it's all gone. I can't do anything but scream. And it just feels like I'm getting stabbed in my abdomen.
Oh, and one of the great things about the Stadol that she expressed was, even though it was still painful, she would get almost complete relief between contractions.
Yes.
Which she hadn't been getting before.
Yeah.
It would go from like painful contraction, nothing. Painful contraction, nothing. And I could like breathe in between.
I actually went to lunch at some point around this point. I just went downstairs, went to the cafeteria, got myself some food. I needed to step away. The nurse, as Nina starts to sort of scream, the nurse is trying to encourage her to not do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's unproductive. But Nina's not doing it for dramatic effect. She cannot help it. She's in the worst pain she's ever felt.
Yeah. No, like I said, for like a brief second in between, I'm like, okay, this time, breathe and groan. And then the contraction comes and I don't even remember anything.
And she starts basically blacking out this whole period. Mm-hmm. So the Stadol completely wears off. She starts, it's very, I have to say, like very, very hard and emotional as somebody who loves somebody very much to watch them in that kind of pain.
Yeah.
It's because without, and I'm looking at the nurse, I'm like, is this normal? This is like a lot of pain. And she's like, yeah, this is how it goes. She's like, there's a lot of hysterical Portuguese women who come through here and complain a lot worse than Nina's complaining right now. So it was tough. And eventually Nina's going like, I think at one point I was like, hey man, like the epidural, like, maybe it's not such a bad thing. And I'm texting with my sister.
Yeah.
And my sister's like, oh my God, get the epidural. She's like, have her enjoy her birth to some degree. This is too much. That's the Pitocin contractions. It's the way it goes. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to tell Nina that. And so now all the advice I'm getting from my sister, and my sister sort of rapid fire texts, it's like stressing me out, like all this advice. But I'm listening to it nonetheless. And then eventually, I don't even have to really talk to Nina about it. She's, because she's crying and stuff, and she's in horrible, horrible, horrible pain. I thought this was the worst of it all. And I said, she goes, I can't. She's like, I think I have to do the epidural. I think I have to do it.
Yep.
I don't think I have any other choice.
In my head, it was, I'll either do the epidural or you can give me a C-section right now. Like, I was like, I can't do this a second longer. Whatever will stop this pain is fine.
And she stopped having any kind of break between contractions.
Yep.
Oh, but here's the thing. So I was like, well, okay, well, how big is she dilated? Because maybe we're on our way. And they're like, we don't know. We're not going to check that until she gets another pain med. And she's due for another state. I want to do that. And she's talking about the epidural. And they said, shit, where was I going with that? Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to know, like, if this was going to go on.
Yeah,
any
but
longer.
at least now we still have that good nurse. We still have Emily, who's like talking us through it and like rubbing my leg. I started getting like weird spasms in my legs. Like the pain
we had to
wasn't
like massage her and stuff, like her hip and her leg, because she was getting these horrible pains, and I'm still like, is this normal? And
she's still like, yeah.
Oh, but I said, I know what I was gonna say. The contractions. I was like, well, you said that it's the amount of time between contractions. How are we doing there? Because the only way they can really measure the intensity of the contractions, which are relevant, is by like holding her tummy during the contractions. And
feeling how intense I'm contracting.
And so she comes back with like, well, these are pre-labor contractions. I'm Googling it. I'm like, they say that the only contractions that matter are the active labor ones. I'm like, hey, is Nina in active labor? They're like, it doesn't seem so.
No, because active labor is after 6 centimeters. So anything that is considered like early labor.
They're like, these are what we call, they're kind of like cramps, they're telling us. And this is like pre-labor, early, I call them mild to moderate. And that like, it's pretty much impossible to hear that she's in this kind of pain. And
it was hard to hear it at the moment. After the fact, I can rationalize what they're saying is, again, they're going based on the intensity of the uterus contraction.
Yep.
And, so to call it like mild to moderate, they're not referring to like my level of pain, obviously. Yes. But it's hard to hear that when you're in that much pain.
Absolutely. Like it's going to get much
right.
worse.
So then it's all like disheartening and you just feel like giving up and being like, this is going to go on for days.
So the good news is they ordered, and they told us this at the top, and we were like, we're not going to need it. They ordered the epidural early on.
Yeah.
Just in case we would need it.
Like when she ordered the Pitocin, she ordered the Stadol, the epidural, a couple of other
all
things.
this sort of pain stuff on standby in case you need it.
Yep.
An anesthesiologist comes up within 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is great, because I've heard a lot of people who had to like wait for him. But as soon as we said we wanted it, I feel like we got it.
And he packs what had to have been 5 minutes of like warning talk into 15 seconds. He just rattles off like, warning, these are the symptoms, sign here. Like this dude knows how to get like an epidural going in.
So, but what are the warnings? Why were you so strongly averse to it?
So it increases chance of C-section by 30%.
So what tends to happen, and what worked out well for us, what we did right, kind of accidentally, is a lot of women get the Pitocin to start with, and they know the contractions are going to be bad. I was foolhardy and thought I had a high pain tolerance. So they get the Pitocin and they get the epidural at the same time.
Yep.
So the Pitocin is increasing the contractions, and the epidural is making it so that you can't feel them.
Yeah.
So the contractions can be extremely severe and hard, and they can be so severe, and you don't know it because you're not feeling anything, that they actually do start affecting the baby, and the baby's heart rate starts going down.
Yeah.
So because you can't feel it, they can increase the Pitocin really quick, and you're okay. So they're bringing on this labor really hard and fast. You feel fine, but the baby starts being in distress, and then they take you to C-section.
Yeah.
So that's the concern, is if you get the epidural and the Pitocin too early.
Yep.
So then the epidural kind of increases the risk of C-section.
Yep.
There's also some other things that that's less obvious and maybe less scientific basis for, but women, is it a question of if you can't get up and walk around in labor, which had been my initial plan before everything went to hell, that can also slow your progression. So if you get the epidural and you're laying in bed and then you don't progress, like, is it because you really weren't active?
Moving, yeah.
So what we did, by us waiting and, when they do recheck me before they give me the epidural, I'm at 5'6", which is good. So now I'm finally getting to active labor.
Oh my God, thank God.
But I got far enough along that the epidural and the Pitocin weren't really having that fight anymore, where they didn't have to really keep increasing it. So that
it turned out the epidural was really very little risk.
Yeah.
Although Nina was a little afraid of not being able to push if she was, because we understood that
happened.
You go completely numb.
Yeah.
Which isn't completely true. But we were told that you'd get very quick relief. So they send me out of the room because now suddenly she's in surgery.
Yeah.
And they inject her spine. They have her sit up.
But the hard thing is that in order to do it, you have to sit on the edge of the bed and curl your spine
completely still.
And you have to stay completely still. and I am not having any break between contractions.
Yep.
And during contractions, my current thing is to scream and roll my head back and forth and flail around. So now I'm going through a contraction. My poor nurse is like holding my shoulders right in front of me, like rubbing like my neck to try to keep me still. And I'm just screaming in her face because I can't move. And the anesthesiologist is putting the epidural in my back.
Yep.
And I'm outside and I don't hear anything for a while. Then I hear screaming and I'm like, oh my God, is everything okay? I'm really starting to, I'm now running off of very little sleep.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting like emotional and stuff. And I'm like I'm wanting this to be done pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I go back in and she's still having painful contractions, but maybe 15, 20 minutes, they taper off to nothing.
Yeah.
No pain.
Yeah. So what was explained to me through my screaming was that it wouldn't be instantaneous, but each contraction would get better until it was
Which is
down to
true.
like nothing, which is exactly what happened. So like the first couple, I'm still screaming, and then like I'm groaning, and then I'm like wincing, and then I feel nothing.
Then for a little while, she can still move her feet and she could feel my hand on her leg, but she couldn't feel pain.
Interesting.
Then over time, one leg went completely dead.
Yep.
The left leg. And the other one was sort of movable.
Yeah.
And what's good about the epidural, at least, is that the moment you don't want to have it anymore, they just stop pumping it into you.
And then it goes slowly, right?
Yeah. It starts to clear.
Yeah.
It takes about an hour.
Yeah. Although my dead leg stayed dead for
Many hours.
like the night. Yeah.
Yeah. But she came out of it completely after a while. So now she's completely relieved. And we're thinking like, okay, we're out of the woods here.
Yeah.
But then her heart rate starts to climb.
Nina's or the baby's?
Nina's. The baby stayed completely perfect the whole time.
Wow.
It's by some, and I kept asking. I kept being like, "Hey, is the baby okay?" The baby's perfect.
Baby doesn't care how much she screams.
So Nina runs what's called tachycardia anyway,
Yeah. High heart rate.
and it's her baseline is at like 110. My baseline's like 65, 70.
Yeah.
Yeah.
110's really high
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
very fit.
Yeah. Normal's like 70 to 90.
Yeah. And you were in very good shape.
As
so.
as a runner, you would expect me to have a low heart rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so so some relevant details there. It probably accounts for some of her anxiety, that high heart rate. Because imagine right now you're sitting here relaxed, and you're at 110. You'd feel a little bit nervous, maybe. So that's Nina's baseline. She can bring that down by doing long, slow runs. About an hour after a half marathon, let's say, she gets down to 90, and she feels like $1 million.
Yep.
I feel real chill.
But
I
it's
feel like I've
of,
taken like drugs.
It's a lot of work to get down to what's even sort of normal.
Yeah.
And so I used to be concerned about it. I was like, is your heart okay? It's like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
So she went in for a stress test maybe 2 years ago where they put you up on the treadmill and stuff.
Yep.
And they told her, they were like, hey, some adult women just run fast and that's what's going on here. And you don't have chest pains. You're asymptomatic. Should be good. We're not worried about it.
Yep.
So cut to.
Got to.
Now she's running up in around this point.
Yeah.
160, 170.
Well, that's pretty high heart rate,
180,
isn't it?
190.
Gets up to about 180, 190 and starts like hovering around 180. I'm staring at it the whole time.
That's pretty high for heart rate. Isn't
Well, and they're getting worried.
So then they do an EKG,
So yeah, they do an EKG.
which comes back supraventricular tachycardia, which is an abnormal heart rhythm. So I now have an arrhythmia.
it? Ooh.
Right. So her heart's not doing great.
Yeah.
So they call in the cardiologist.
Right. Well, they actually, the midwife showed up around, now it's like nighttime. And the midwife showed up and was like, all right, let's start pushing. And was kind of trying to keep Nina and I calm by not talking to us a whole lot.
Yeah.
But basically, they were in a situation where she's ruptured. She's got the epidural now. This heart rate can't climb too high, and we got to get this baby out.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, when she shows up and checks me, I am 9 centimeters. So she's like, you'll be ready to push in a second.
Yeah, they check her again. I'm like, ooh, she's like almost fully dilated. Then.
Yeah.
I'm very relieved by that. I'm texting everybody that that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm keeping up a lot of the communication. I was running back and forth between both of our cell phones, keeping everybody up to date with all the gnarly details.
I was following it all day on Slack.
Were
I
you?
check in every hour or so.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I wasn't quite as detailed in Slack as I guess I was to some degree.
Yeah. I felt reasonably informed.
So the midwife comes in. I'm asked to pick up her dead leg and push it forward. And the nurse picks up the other one. And the midwife sort of puts her fingers inside of Nina and tries to kind of encourage dilation now of the vagina.
Yep.
Or the vulva.
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah. And and this is where things start to get kind of like disgusting because like there's a lot of pooling of like blood and stuff.
Yep.
I don't remember any of this.
Well, you didn't see it. I did.
Well, like, I know. I don't even remember Julie. I don't even remember Julie being there.
The midwife.
Like until the cardiologist comes in and we were pushing, and she told me. I remember her telling me that the OB was going to come in to use the vacuum. Like I don't remember anything before that.
So they mentioned the vacuum because basically they don't want to have this baby in her for another second.
I remember her saying that I had a really prominent pubic bone and that was going to be hard for the baby
because it
to
was
get.
sort of pushing against the baby.
Yep.
So I mean, at this point, everything's kind of gone to hell without a C-section.
Yeah.
Everything like this is the woman who wanted a home birth.
This was not the magical birth experience I had.
Yeah.
And by this point, there are so many monitors. There's probably 8 different beeps going off. There's just beeps everywhere.
Oh yeah,
it's driving me.
So
batshit.
after my abnormal EKG, they now put these giant pads on my chest to be constantly monitoring my
They're
cardiac.
very sticky.
Yep.
And are huge.
And so I was a little taken aback when suddenly that she was like, "All right, Nina, try to push." And they tell you, I used to be like, I wonder if, pushing a baby is anything like pushing a bowel. Sure enough, they tell you, they're like, push it as if you're moving your bowels. And I'm like, that's funny. And I've been told, this is like one of those stupid things you always hear. They're like, oh yeah, they always shit. Like anytime
well, yeah, 95% of women.
Well,
have a
Nina,
bowel movement
I was
on the
promised shit and I did not get shit. What I got instead was a lot of blood.
A lot of blood.
So we're kind of putting Nina up into this frog position as high as possible. If my dad was ever going to pass out by just being up by my mom's head, and they advise men, they're like, you'll never be sexually attracted to your wife again. Don't look. Well, they put me right in the thick of it. I was essentially a medical personnel. And by the way, I don't know, like, I kind of compartmentalize. There's 2 Ninas to me. There's sort of sexy, beautiful Nina, and then there's like person I care for Nina.
Yeah.
And they don't really mix that much. Like, so seeing her in any kind of medical distress doesn't mean like, ew, I don't want to have sex anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like totally doesn't register.
It doesn't make any sense to me either, but
Yeah. But they start telling her push. I'm like, are we doing this? Like, is this happening right now? And she's really kind of like fishing around inside of Nina, trying to keep everything nice and open.
Yep.
And then, this little meek cardiologist comes in, this Indian woman. Yeah. And she starts just kind of babbling nonsense about Nina's heart.
So what she's doing is she's saying that when you're in SVT, supraventricular tachycardia, there's a method that you can use called the Valsalva maneuver, which is basically bearing down, like if you were having like a bowel movement.
Yep.
And sometimes that actually triggers the vagus nerve that's part of like your conduction system to switch you back into a normal rhythm. So in my crazy stupor, I remember just thinking this woman's a moron because she's suggesting that we do these Valsalva maneuvers. And she's trying to talk to me through all this. And she's like, put your chin to your chest. And she's about to engage me on doing these Valsalva maneuvers. And
I'm having a baby.
And me and Frankie and like the midwife and my nurse are all looking at her like, you idiot, this woman's about to push a baby out. That is the ultimate Valsalva maneuver.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're doing.
Yes.
And that's something else I've learned about medical personnel. They know nothing about each other's departments.
That's kind of amazing to me, but I mean, because obviously, that cardiologist should have known that the labor motion is the same basic motion.
And my midwife says that. My midwife turns to her and says, "She's pushing now. She's doing that.
Yeah.
Like, what else do you want her to do?"
So they start telling. So Nina, despite the fact that she's not having any pain anymore, she looks awfully distressed every time they say to push, and they tell her to push hard,
hard and long.
And when they're like,
I couldn't.
You got to do it again.
I can't
and she
breathe.
couldn't breathe. She's like sort of blacking out a little bit, but she didn't want to tell anybody.
Well, now my heart rate is 230, 240.
She's going up to 240, and I'm like, she's gonna have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And they're, in my opinion, not giving her enough break between the pushes.
Yeah.
Or like her heart rate needs to come back down, and they only let it get down to like 190 before pushing again.
Yeah.
Right? So then in comes this like autistic doctor. This dude with a goatee, kind of short, comes in. He's real matter of fact.
The obstetrician. Yeah.
He's apparently the obstetrician, and he's going to help. And so he shows up with the vacuum that we saw in the birth class, and
I thought we would never see again.
How does this device work? Like,
it's basically
it looks like a little
plastic suction.
Yeah, it looks like a little circle kind of coin piece.
Yep.
Like suction cup that they put on her head, and then you like pull back on like this, like plastic tubing basically, and tries to help
Really?
And you
suction them
pull.
out.
And you pull. And you don't pull hard.
Yeah.
She still has to push.
Yeah.
Very hard. But it's meant to encourage.
Guide.
Yeah. So the dude puts it way up Nina. But yeah, by this point, Nina's vagina is just
Open to the room.
everybody's tool. And so it's way up there, and the dude starts pulling kind of gently. And at one point, he pulls kind of hard, and the thing pops out of Nina, and he goes flying back a little bit. And for about 5 seconds, I thought that was the baby's head, or at least a piece of it, just flying out. And I was like, ready for him to break the news to everyone that the whole thing had truly gone to hell.
Oh my God. That must have been terrifying.
I was really terrified. I was like, oh, and he was like, oh, I'm going to try again. And, I was like, okay. All right. So she's about to have a heart attack. He's like trying to get this. I'm like, this is too fucking much. I'm having a horrible time. I want to go home. I'm like, I sure hope it happens before midnight so it can be Father's Day.
We're missing WWE's Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
We've missed a pay-per-view.
I liked life before.
John was right.
So they start being like, hey, Frankie, you can see its head, right? And I'm like, no. All I see is like Nina's very bloody vagina. And which is like opening more and more. Now, probably about 5 minutes into this, a baby starts coming out.
Yep.
Which is very weird. And I always used to wonder, like, how does a baby come out of a vagina? I mean,
Yeah.
I happen to know how tight the vagina can be. And it sort of made sense once you see it. You're like, okay, I can sort of see that. And I think I have seen a few live births in my lifetime, like on, not live, but I've seen them on camera and stuff. I don't know. It sort of made sense to me. But the baby was dark gray, lifeless. I guess that's part of it. I don't know. From movies, once again.
Yeah.
It's always a slightly slimy baby that's crying, that's given to the mother, and everyone cries.
Yes.
This was Nina's passing out.
Yeah.
And the baby comes out, like lifeless.
After I got cut to release the baby, there was a surgical procedure.
Yes. Well, so the dude's like trying. I'm up with Nina. I'm trying to encourage her. I'm like, hey, try to keep your heart rate down by not, maybe don't listen to them about the pushing. And all of a sudden we both hear at the same time, snip. And we know what it was. I mean, they just gave her an episiotomy, which is basically they snip your vagina open more.
Yep.
Like from your taint
Yep.
to the vagina, they open you up
Yep.
for more. And Nina gets this look on her face of like, what an asshole. Because he didn't say anything. He didn't say, hey, I'm about to do this. Because it means for her a lot more recovery.
Yep.
But I
So
think
it's
he was in a bind.
Yeah. I mean, technically they're not supposed to do it without informed consent because it's considered a surgical procedure.
Yep.
But I can understand where it was like, we have to get the baby, like your heart rate, the baby, this can't become a C-section. There's no way
it's
now.
too late.
Not now.
So I understand, but I would have, it felt like a violation to not have him be like, we need to get the baby out now. I need to make an incision.
Yeah,
Or, like,
he should have at least took him
said-
10, 15 seconds to say it.
3 seconds would have done it to
Yeah.
be like, I need to cut. Like,
Yeah.
but
They're never-
nothing, just did it.
I still find it strange with all these bodily fluids and everything that's going on. I was never asked to make sure my hands were washed.
You weren't touching anything. You just holding my
I
leg.
guess not, but I was awful close. I mean, I could smell it. The iron of it all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was in stupid clothes. Like we weren't
Nintendo
even.
shirt.
Yeah, we weren't even in all that medical of a setting.
Yeah.
Like it was sort of just like a random bed. I don't know. It was very strange. So out comes the baby. They rush it over to, and I'm like, did we have a stillborn? Like, I don't even know what's going on. They rush it over to
The warmer.
To a warmer. It's a lamp and a little bassinet, and they put her in there, and they stick a suction cup in her mouth, and they blow a bunch of fluid out of her mouth, and then
I didn't even know that was a thing.
me neither. But I guess it makes sense, right? Because they've never breathed air in their lungs before.
Yeah.
They've only ever breathed.
But what's supposed to happen if that device didn't exist for the past million years?
Well, yeah. I mean,
So-
we wondered this. My dad would ask the question, "What do they do in the Serengeti?"
Yeah.
So the idea with a slower, more natural labor
Yeah.
is that the work of the contractions pushing the baby down through the birth canal actually kind of compress its lungs and pushes out a lot of this stuff in advance. But when you have a really quick like pushing phase like I did, everything stays in the baby. Like for home births, if you were really prepared at home, you could potentially like put the baby upside down, rub and pat its back really hard. It will cough everything out. But they're just going to go use suction because it's quick.
So then she starts crying. It's sort of a quiet cry. And I'm like, wow, we got a baby. And I'm wanting...
There's a baby in this room all of a sudden.
I'm wanting to share the moment with Nina, and the baby is beautiful. I mean, she's very pretty and cute, even in her current state. I take a cell phone picture or two right at that moment. So that's what you see if you've seen those pictures. And she's supposed to go skin to skin with Nina. So they try... And they wanted to get a latch and the whole thing. But by this point, there's the cardiologist. They bring in ICU nurses, which were like 3 or 4 college-aged, kind of dopey, like with their hands in their pockets and stuff. People just standing around.
What were they even doing there?
Trying to figure out what to do with Nina. Like, do they bring her to the telemetry heart unit? Or do they keep her on labor and delivery? Again, none of them really overlap with their skills. So they all have to confer together to figure out what to do with this patient. So Nina...
I'm dizzy and trying to hide it, so I'm just not like
She wants to stay
anyone.
on the unit with her baby.
So,
because otherwise they're going to separate her from the baby.
So I'm trying to like maintain... I'm like a stoned person trying to act like everything's totally normal.
So I keep trying to like be like, hey, like your baby's really cute. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, oh man, this is really ruined. And then she's like, hey, I got sticky stuff all over me. Can dad do the skin to skin instead of me?
So they put the baby on me, but again, I've got all the cardiac monitoring on. She's basically up on my neck, and I'm like, she's not getting anything from this. I'm not getting anything from this. I'm like, I want her to actually get some. They're saying this is so important. I actually want her to get some skin to skin time. So
So I whip my shirt off and I go to a rocking chair and I sit with the baby for. It's supposed to be an hour, so I sat with the baby for an hour.
It was so cute,
and it was very sweet.
That I did see from across.
And I kept trying to sort of share that with Nina. It was tough though. She couldn't see. She was blacking out and stuff.
Was your heart rate improving at all during this time?
It had come back down to like 200. Like it wasn't the 230s, 240s.
No, it was 180, 190.
Yeah.
But super high.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super high.
That's super high.
And so everybody was like waiting for it to come back down, and it wasn't coming back down.
They kept giving me a drug, low pressure, to like bring it down.
And
and like it would.
coming down.
And it wasn't coming down.
And it was freaking people out. And so I
was freaking people out, but like again, they didn't know I had the symptoms that I had, but those symptoms did start resolving. And once they started to resolve, I like back at like 180, I started to feel pretty normal.
I wanted them to just ignore the whole thing because I do know that Nina does this. And I thought it was more important for her and the baby that they're on the same unit. And so
I'm still in the hospital. If something happened, rush me to the other unit.
So I was trying to remind them of her baseline, and they were kind of listening to that, and they were like, well, she is asymptomatic, and she says no chest pain. And everybody was, and they were like, yeah.
Meanwhile, they're all standing around. To my memory, I could be wrong. The doctor who cut me is sewing me up. So like,
blood everywhere. He's sewing her up. The cut that he did.
I'm
just
still
big old stitches.
I'm still like legs open, and now there's like the ICU nurses and like the maternity nurses.
It was nasty for her.
It's just horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, like you cannot.
I mean, I'm not a super modest chick. I'm fine with it.
Like, let's flash back to the woman that was like, my breasts are only for my husband. Like, Jesus Christ. This is just blown wide open.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was. Oh, and I'll say this too about the. I know that placenta comes after the birth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The amount of blood and guts that is pulled out of a pregnant lady after she's done, I didn't know it was quite that much.
Really?
He just pulled blood and guts out of Nina for like a minute. Just blood and guts. Just tons.
It's not guts. It's
just into a little pan. Just tons and tons of stuff. I was like, holy shit. That's what's like cooped up in her tummy right now. Crazy. So I sat with the baby. The baby was great and cried a little, but not much. And so then they're talking about, they're like, well, I think it's probably normal. I think she'll be on labor and delivery. And the ICU nurses take off. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they were really dopey, really like college aged. But then finally the cardiologist makes the call. They're like, nah, she needs to be on telemetry. And that's it. And now suddenly like she's not going to be with the baby overnight. And they're like, well, we can cart her up there every 3 hours for a feeding.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be with the baby in Nina's room. So the baby and I bunk up.
Yep.
She's in a little bassinet cart, and I'm in Nina's bed, and I really need to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm going off of 2 hours and 27 hours at this point. But there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep because every time I try to put the baby down, she cries.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. So now I'm just like looking forward to the next time I get to see Nina because maybe I can hand her to Nina and go to sleep or something. But until that happens, I ended up sitting up with the baby, had her in my arms, and just fell asleep with her in my arms, which is the last thing you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because you'll just drop her.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But I did do that. The nurse on duty at that time, must have been 60 or older.
Yep.
She was this old school nurse. She has cared for 1 trillion babies in her lifetime. And she was pissed that I was sleeping in the seat like that, in the chair like that. But she was like teaching me. She was like, hey, so one of the things that might happen is the baby will, get a bunch of mucus in her throat and you'll have to take the suction thing and suck out all the mucus and, just do that if it happens. And I was like, well, what if I'm sleeping? And she's like, you'll hear it. She'll just start gagging. I'm like, what if I don't hear it? I'm like kind of freaked out by that. But we took her to Nina. It was great. And Nina, now that she's sort of, and by the way, the TV at the hospital, like, it just didn't work.
No.
Not for my room, not for her room, not for any room.
We had a list of cable channels. Like, it was supposed to work, but it didn't.
Like, most channels were blue, and some were, like, static.
So I'm thinking for maternity, it's the worst thing in the world because you have all these sleep-deprived parents who need to at least have something to watch and do while they're up with their kids.
Yeah.
For me, I am now in this sterile room. I'm not being treated like a postpartum patient. So, like, all of, like, my pain isn't being like really monitored.
Yeah. They're just worried about the
cardiac. I have like a numb leg. I can't get out of bed. Turns out I couldn't pee. I don't know if you knew this. I had to be straight cast like 3 times because I kept telling them I was in so much pain. Like I felt like I needed to pee, but I couldn't pee.
But they would when they cathed her, she would pee a ton.
A ton came out. So they're pumping me with fluid.
We didn't talk about how often you had to go to the bathroom during pregnancy. Constant.
Oh, constant. Yeah, that has been the hugest relief. The fact that I am no longer going to the bathroom every 30 minutes
I remember
is amazing.
At your work, the bathroom's wicked far.
Oh my God. So yeah, at my work, I work in this huge long building and there's one bathroom that's close to me. And as of the past month and a half, it's been under construction and being painted. Oh. So I had to walk to the other end of the building, like in between patients. And like my sciatic pain got so bad that it was painful just to walk there. But so I'm in this room like alone. Like I can't really sleep. I've got like my monitors now are beeping at me. I've got no TV. Like I'm separated from like my kids on like the other side of the building. It was just horrible.
But it was funny because she was crying all night, but every time they put the baby in the rolly bassinet and this old school nurse started like rushing her down the hallway, there'd be this sort of loud roar of the cart and the baby would just knock right out. She just loved it. And
the old nurse knew.
Yeah.
But then she would show up to me asleep and not want to breastfeed because she was so tired.
Yeah.
So by the time and they actually did have, that nurse tried to help Nina along.
Yeah.
And that nurse was just real grabby. She was like, mind if I touch your boob? Just like,
Let me manipulate this.
After everything I had been through, the fact that like every nurse had to touch my boob, like the lactation consultant. Like they kept doing all those peri checks. Like every time a new nurse come on, they have to like punch my stomach to check the size of my uterus and at the same time look to see if I'm like if I have like blood clots.
Because you actually get reverse contractions.
They continue, so your uterus has to keep shrinking, and if it stays big, you're actually more likely to bleed. As it shrinks, it like the blood vessels close.
Can we mention the awful hemorrhoids?
We have, so let's go for it.
Most pregnant women get hemorrhoids.
I didn't know that.
Nina's never had hemorrhoids in her life.
Yeah,
and during pregnancy, I got one, and it was uncomfortable, but like
it's from the pressure of the baby sitting right on your right on your rectum, essentially.
Yeah, it causes just this like inflamed blood vessel.
And after pregnancy, after all the pushing and stuff, so now she's sort of experiencing constipation and these inflamed hemorrhoids. So when we got home, it was just the worst thing ever. The pain, it seemed like her number one concern was these hemorrhoids.
Yeah,
like out of everything.
It's like shards of glass are growing out of your ass.
Yep.
And
so like if you have to poop, it's just like like this is impossible. Yeah. So I'm falling asleep. Like I remember I was like babbling essentially at the nurse when I was in your room, and she was like, "Oh my God, he's tired."
Yeah.
And so then we got back down after we visited you the first time. And I was like, maybe I can sleep. And I try, and the baby's just crying. So I put her in the cart, and I go to try to take her for a walk. And I'm just out. I'm in my underwear in the hallway.
You were in your underwear in the hallway?
My boxers and a shirt.
I didn't know that part of the story.
And
Were there other people like in the hallway?
I don't know. And I was in my underwear and often shirtless in front of the nurses all the time.
Yeah, at this point it's probably like 2 or 3 a.m. because they brought her back to me at like 3 or 4 a.m. to feed.
So I start walking her, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to make her go to sleep so I can sleep." And I'm just walking by like the nurse's station, and the old woman's like, "Why don't you let me take her for a little while so that you can get some rest?"
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Sounds good."
Good deal.
I already don't want a parent.
Yeah. Forcing it off.
I mean, the baby is like 3 hours old. So I hoisted off on her. I go to sleep, and I woke up panicked because the baby wasn't in the room. And I was like, "Oh my God, I lost the baby." But it was with Nina. I somehow had skipped an entire visit with Nina.
Oh yeah. The nurse came back and brought her to breastfeed, and I was like,
Where's
"My
Frankie?"
husband?" And she was like, "I let him sleep." I was like, "Okay."
I'm like, I'm so fucking tired. And I got about 2 hours of sleep. Yeah. That was it, though. Woke up, and now people started to want to visit. So my dad is the very first of the parents to, because my mom was at school.
Yeah.
My mom would have loved to have taken. My mom wanted to see this baby. My mom has been fantasizing about this baby. She's like, I can't stop thinking about Gloria.
Yep.
I just want to see her. You know, and she made a nice quilt and all this stuff. But my dad was the only one available to come because my mom was at her last day of school for the year because my mom's a school nurse.
Yep.
And it's apparently the day of the year you can't miss because it's like the day that you sort of close up the office and stuff.
Close up shop.
And my dad gets pretty emotional right off the bat. He's like, "Oh my God, she's so cute." And then he immediately is like, "Is she breathing? Is everything okay?" Like he doesn't know how to hold her.
Yeah.
I asked him at one point, I go, "Dad, did you have a lot of sleepless nights when Christy and I were kids?" And he goes, "No."
No.
He goes, your mother did all that. He goes, "I'm not going to lie to you. But the deal was I went and made the bread and she took care of you guys." And so he really doesn't know. I mean, he never changed a diaper. He really doesn't know anything.
Wow.
So it's the two of us idiots.
Yep.
You know, I was honestly at this point already more experienced with babies
Than he was.
Yep. But then I went to go visit Nina, and her mom and stepdad showed up, and that was cool. And you know, I don't know. From that point, we ended. It just sort of sucked that Nina had to be separated from the baby until pretty late the following day, Monday.
Yeah, my whole thing was just then bugging the cardiology team on the unit to be like, when can I go back to maternity? Like, what are you looking for? What are you waiting for? They had me on the monitor. They still kept giving me that low pressure medication.
Yep.
They weren't ordering any new tests. So I'm like, what are you doing? You're just holding me over. Keep giving me this med. Let me leave the unit. You're going to tell me to follow up with outpatient cardiology anyway. It's not urgent. I don't have to be here anymore.
Well,
so I just kept hounding everyone to be like, when can I leave?
That's part of it is you have to sort of wait until the doctor does his rounds or her rounds for any decision to be made.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no
like fast forward.
Yeah.
It's based on their schedule.
I mean, I was trying to tell my dad wasn't really understanding because we were also seeing the baby. It's called rooting. She sticks her tongue out. She opens her mouth. And she's saying, I need to eat.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, the baby needs to eat. I'm like, I know. But they're not letting us take her to Nina. And he's like, well, tell them they have to. I'm like, it's okay. I'll go do that. And then they wouldn't care.
They didn't care.
I'm like, Dad, you don't understand. Like, Nina's dad broke his neck in a car accident 2 years ago. And we had to wait 5 days for a very simple surgery because of the availability of the surgeon.
Yeah.
Like, and he had to sit there in discomfort with a broken neck for 5 days.
The broken freaking neck.
With a broken freaking neck, as Kurt Angle might say. So, you know, it's just like, that's how it goes. I don't know what to tell you. Like, sometimes
there's high priority and not high priority. And
sometimes
those are
you have
things.
to wait for the availability. Now, there's a whiteboard in the room I was staying in, Nina's room, that said, like, Mom's room is such and such down the hall, which like made us sad. It was like a heartbreaking.
I didn't see it till later. Like, once I rejoined them, even like the first day, like I didn't see it, but like the day we were going to leave, I looked at the dry erase board and I saw Mom's room on telemetry and the number of my room. And I was like, that is so depressing and sad.
But
that ever happened.
We were really pretty stricken by how beautiful the kid was.
Yeah.
Like she's pretty strikingly attractive. Like she's a really pretty little baby. Like she doesn't quite even look like a newborn.
Some newborns are just awkward looking. She has this nice heart-shaped face. Some newborns have like the long weird face with like the weird alien eyes.
She, of course, was a little cone-headed because of the vacuum, but that's gone away now. She was born with quite a bit of hair. It's I've been told she looks just like me by a lot of people because of the cheeks mostly. But anyway, we stayed with her in the hospital for 3 days. They do all the screenings. They do her hearing. They do this thing called bilirubin, which is to test her is it melanin levels?
To test for like jaundice.
Jaundice,
test for like for liver function, basically.
Yeah, because that yellowness in the skin is an indication. Most babies have it, but also most babies it clears up without any treatment.
Yeah, they basically poop it all out, and she's a champion pooper.
Yeah, so you hear a lot of things like we want to see one poopy diaper and one wet diaper on day 1, and then we want to see how it's like for a week we want to see that many poopy diapers for every day that she's old and stuff like that.
So when did Nina actually get out of cardiology?
The next evening.
The next day. So she was born Sunday night.
Yep.
I spent Sunday night there. Monday morning, I kept seeing a couple different cardiologists. They went back and forth, but it was kind of determined we're not really going to test you for anything. Yeah. We'll keep you on this medication, take it at home, but you need to make an appointment with an outpatient cardiologist to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
They were like, it could be this really simple arrhythmia thing, which they can treat with what is called an ablation.
Yep.
Where they basically just go in and like deaden part of the electrical circuit of your heart, and it will slow it down. And they're like, that's a really simple thing. If it's this particular problem, if it's not this particular problem, then you should probably figure out what it is.
So did the arrhythmia develop during pregnancy?
No. So I didn't have it all of pregnancy. That was all normal. It was right after the epidural. So something about getting the epidural.
Yep.
My theory is that her body continued to undergo the trauma it had been going under.
Yeah.
But without pain.
Yeah, but without pain, because that's all the epidural did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
somehow maybe the pain was sort of tamping down
keeping
the heart.
something in check. I don't know.
Once there was no pain, it was just like
interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But I mean, so the next morning, once I was on the telemetry unit, I didn't have the arrhythmia anymore. So the arrhythmia is gone.
Oh, really?
Like I'm now in what's called normal sinus rhythm. It's just really fast again.
Yeah.
It hasn't come quite down to what I used to be.
Like 140.
Like now I'm like running like 130 to 140 all the time.
Yep.
They're still being indecisive about what to do with her.
Yeah, well, but even now, still like being home, I'm running like 130, and which makes me like more like kind of lightheaded and out of breath, easy. But I mean, I'm not doing anything, so it doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
So that was that morning. The cardiologist basically figuring out they weren't going to do anything with me.
Yep.
And then by Monday afternoon, I got to go over to maternity and be on the maternity unit with Frankie and Baby.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a boring couple of days where we both got meals, which is cool, and some of the meals were pretty good. They brought a cheeseburger that was pretty decent for hospital food.
Wow.
They had a pretty good cafeteria too. That's something I remember. We just my mom got to hold the baby for a really long time at one. There's no place for the two of us to sleep. That's one thing that sucks.
Yeah.
The only bed is the one for the lady.
Yep.
And a lot of times she'd be feeding in her chair, so I would sleep, and then that went on throughout the night.
What's the normal sequence of events? Like, are you supposed to go home or just
so there was this weird fold out bench that like became kind of like a bed.
Yeah.
But I folded it out just to see what it would feel like. It was like just boards.
So horrifically uncomfortable that like, you would never sleep in it.
Yeah, so I guess like the father can and often does.
We figured out a way to sleep together. It was when we were babies, we probably slept on our stomachs most of the time.
Yep.
They've since
you're
supposed to sleep on your back. And so we were really trying to get her used to sleeping in the bassinet on her back. She really likes being on our arms. She likes being in bed. They tell you to never have a baby like in bed with you.
Yeah.
Because you'll crush it. But like I said, like so far so good with that.
And it's the dirty secret that like everybody does it.
Apparently everybody does it. Or some people do it. Whatever. I don't care. So then we came home and that was amazing. It was a really great feeling.
So I had my night there. Monday night was kind of like Frankie's Sunday night.
Yeah.
So he kind of got to sleep Monday night. And then I had like this crazy fever dream night with her where like she wouldn't sleep. She was crying. I'd put her in the bassinet. She'd last maybe 2 minutes. I'd get up again. Again, I had no TV. I'm falling asleep in the chair. We have the same old school nurse who's kind of like, you're not falling asleep in that chair, are you?
With us, yeah.
And I'm like, oh
I was
my God.
having horrible dreams too during all of this.
Like we were just so ready to be home because I was just like, home, even if she's up all night.
Yeah, it's much easier to deal with
than this weird claustrophobic room that I feel like I'm going insane in.
Where nobody can even lay down, really.
Yeah.
Oh, but a hospital photographer came by.
Yeah.
And said, hey, basically, she didn't really push it. She was this really gentle lady.
Yeah.
And she wasn't really forthcoming with the pricing. But essentially, she takes really nice photos of your baby and a couple with you in the frame, but not too many, for like $100 for a whole flash drive full of them.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing it, and I'm really glad I did because the photos came out awesome.
Yeah, I saw them. They're beautiful.
Yeah. And, you know, the kid only looks that way for a second.
Yeah.
So
I was glad you did it. I was like, it's not going to be worth it.
We almost turned her away. We were so close to being like, we can take our own photos. Thanks.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I need a picture of her with like a bow on her head, because I knew they were going to do that. I knew they were going to do
Right.
like,
Of course. Yeah.
But there's some with, some without. There's
Yeah.
like a flower crown. Whatever. I thought it was cute.
They turned out to be great. I'm glad
There's
you
some
did
really
them.
good ones. So we got her home, and that's kind of when the unattended. Oh, and the lactation nurses really worked with Nina a lot.
Yeah.
Like I said, they give you a lot of information about like when you go home. They must have told us about like the poop schedule a trillion times. We're like, we know. We even took the class. You really don't need to take the class because they reteach it.
They reteach it over and over.
They really,
probably.
really do. And
Feed
it's
it
already
into you.
redundant information. Like I remember the class was like they would tell you the information, then they'd show you a video with the information, then they give you a book with the same information. So you get to know this stuff after a while. But that was when the unattended breastfeeding started, and we had one okay night, and then the next night, the second night at home, Nina had a hellish breastfeeding night with the baby, where now the shallow latches and the falling asleep during latching and all the stuff we were sort of warned about, even though we tried to avoid it, sort of happened.
Yeah.
And she was just like, you know, and I can't help because I can't breastfeed. And so it was like, well, do we, you know, and they make you go to the pediatrician a bunch of times, like I said. So we ended up asking a lactation nurse at the pediatricians who have lactation nurses at the pediatrics office, you know, can we supplement with formula?
Yeah.
And the pediatrician was like, no, all breastfeeding all the time. And we're like, well, shit, man. Like, that's the kind of advice that would make you just give up on breastfeeding altogether.
Yeah.
Or you're just like, I just won't tell anybody. I'll just go formula. Now, like I said, I wasn't breastfed, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I even slept on my stomach, damn it. So who knows about some of
Well,
this
the thing
stuff?
is that babies actually sleep better on their stomachs. That's kind of part of what them sleeping on their back preventing SIDS is they don't get too deep asleep, so that if they do stop breathing, they kind of like wake up. Babies actually sleep deeper on their stomach.
This is kind of a weird thing, the sudden infant baby death syndrome thing, where it's like no one knows what causes it, but they know what correlates to it. So they can say you can decrease risk by
doing these things.
But we don't even know what causes it anyway.
They have a vague idea that the babies stop breathing and don't get the kind of message to restart. So then, what they found is that somehow, like, parent alcohol consumption and definitely smoke around the baby increases the risk. Again, sleeping on anything other than the back, things like that.
Oh, but sure enough, remember that mucus thing? Like she would fill up with mucus. It happened on like day 2 or 3.
Yep.
The old school nurse rushed in, pumped it all out of her because Nina caught it. She's like, "Hey, is she okay?" And she was just like,
Well,
and she wasn't making any sound.
Well, they had come in to draw labs on me for the millionth time.
Yep.
So I'm sitting across the room, and so I can't get to her because they're like about to stick a needle in my arm.
Yeah.
And I see her start like flailing, and I'm like, "Frankie, what's going on?" And I hadn't gotten the warning.
I was like, "Oh, this is the
event.
thing," but
Yeah. This is that event.
And they hit some kind of white light that made the whole unit like
It was like a panic button.
1,000 people came running in, and everything was fine.
And everything.
And I was
fine,
like, "So what if this happens again?" They're like, "Do what we just did." And then she was like, "But call 911 too, if it doesn't work at first." And I was like, "Jesus Christ!"
That's like a scary, like, oh, just do this simple trick, but be ready to call 911
Yeah.
if the trick doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm like, and hey, I didn't hear any sound, so what if it happens when I'm sleeping? Oh crap!
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this sort of stuff that scares you.
Yeah.
But nothing like that has happened, thank God, since. But yeah, it's really wreaked havoc on Nina's nipples. In addition to like even just sitting to breastfeed because of the hemorrhoids. She's on Motrin, which is an ibuprofen that helps a lot. But it's just a lot. It's a lot for the body to go through.
Yeah.
And that's some of what like I didn't even know as like a women's health nurse practitioner is I just kind of all you hear about on TV and stuff is like, oh my God, the sleepless nights. Oh, they'll be crying. Like no one tells you like, oh, there'll be multiple layers of constant physical discomfort that you have to battle through in addition to the sleep deprivation.
Quite honestly, like changing diapers is like no problem.
Yeah.
It's like really no one. I don't care.
Yeah.
But the breastfeeding has been a real challenge.
Yep.
But it's getting a lot better. Sometimes she doesn't wait between feedings. I mean, we've been recording this whole time, and she hasn't. Well, she fed once.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to like wake her up to feed her when we're done. Yeah.
Right. So she'll sleep all day too, is the thing, and then she'll be up all night. So there's some of that, but I don't know. It's been kind of fun. I mean, it's unfortunately a lot of the burden's on Nina.
Yeah.
But we've taken her out to restaurants to eat 4 or 5 times now.
Yep.
Just to get us out of the door, and that's been kind of awesome. So that's pretty much our whole story.
What an epic tale. I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah. That's
I was
kinda
not
all of
expecting it to be that eventful. I had a fairly uneventful pregnancy, save some nausea in the filming of Box Mac episodes. But other than that, I thought we were going to just sail right through this thing.
So in terms of a postmortem, looking back at the whole experience, things you would have done differently, anything. Is there anything
Well, we
that
were
you could have or would have or should have done differently?
One option would have been after her water broke.
Yeah.
Hanging out at home till the afternoon and then
Just
telling them it
chill.
happened later.
Yeah.
That's one.
And lying.
And not getting that drug early
Yeah,
in
that
the day.
Pitocin really kind of fucked her,
Yeah.
honestly. So that's one thing. And then other than that, I mean, yeah, what would you tell somebody? Like, what's a key piece of advice? I don't know.
I mean, it's something that I couldn't have known because I did have that cardiology evaluation. I never in a million years thought it would come back up.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I wonder if I should have at some point seen a cardiologist during my pregnancy and been like, hey, everyone's saying I'm asymptomatic. No one seems concerned.
Well, it should have all been by your medical history, and presumably that piece of information was in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it.
But it wasn't.
I had the
The
evaluation.
fact that she had cancer apparently was in there, which was not true.
So yeah, I don't know. Some of it is like it's just stuff you can't predict. Like
Yeah.
I thought I had it all pretty well under control. Like I really thought after having contractions for like 12 hours, like that I would have had like more. Hi, baby. I would have had more progression when we showed up. Like I didn't think it would be 2 centimeters.
Yeah.
Like I really thought we were going to show up and be like 4 or 5.
Yep.
And like
be ready
just
to
chill out in the
go.
hospital, and it was going to get painful but normal painful, and
Yeah.
I did not expect the cascade to happen.
We've supplemented with formula a few times, and sometimes it's just necessary.
Yeah.
Because Nina's breasts just need a break.
Yep.
They need to heal.
well, sometimes I just don't.
Nina
Sometimes I
needs a break.
sometimes I just don't even have any milk. Like she's eaten like for hours,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I have
Sometimes
nothing
she
left to
runs
give
out.
you.
Yep.
So I think this sort of cult of constant, like breastfeeding is the only way.
Yeah.
I think needs to be kind of given up a little bit.
Yep.
We learned also that the pre-made formula is much better than the mix.
Yep.
The baby seems to take it better.
Yeah, she won't take. We got like this powdered stuff. She won't take the powder.
I mean, the logic is that they get nipple confusion. But you can get bottles that really mimic a human nipple pretty well, and I don't know. I definitely advise people, like, if you wanted any kind of modesty, like, you're not going to get it.
Yeah. Give up that notion.
This is just how it goes.
I don't know how like a very like Christian or Mormon or definitely like Muslim woman would get through
we'll
this
just forget
process.
that
Just forget it.
Yeah.
She's supposed to heal. Her episiotomy is supposed to heal in 6 to 8 weeks. A lot of things apparently are supposed to kind of go away by 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Nina's been getting a lot of tremendous compliments about how awesome she looks for having given birth a week ago. People can't believe we're out with the baby this early on, but
Is it normal to?
I don't think it is. But we've been doing it.
You've been doing it.
I've had a couple of friends who have gone like either way. Like some friends are like, oh, we were just so overwhelmed that like we didn't go out for like weeks.
Yeah.
And then other people have told me basically, which is how kind of we feel, which is like we just had to get out of the house.
Yeah,
Like,
I
we
think it
took
would
her
drive
out.
me nuts.
Well, postpartum depression's a real thing, and Nina hasn't really seen any symptoms of that.
Yeah.
And I think part of it's been because we've been pretty good about staying active.
Yeah,
Yep.
I haven't even really gotten. It normally kicks in by now, but it's pretty normal to get like the baby blues. Like not as bad as depression, but most women get like a little kind of lull in mood. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's because they're on their own. Like you've also been home with me, so that's been easy, and we've gotten out and all that stuff. But
I can see, like, I didn't know to what extent my life would be over. People tell you your life is over. And maybe, I mean, it's certainly changed.
Yeah.
The rhythm has changed. But there are all kinds of times that are just downtime where
Yeah.
she's sleeping. There's no reason I can't be editing during that.
Yeah.
And people can visit certainly, and that's totally fine. You can't go out for too long at this stage, but I don't know. I think you should have a kid if you want to have a kid. I think people are going to listen to this, unfortunately, and they're going to go, "Oh man, never mind," or something like that. And it's like, but it's so awesome, and she is. She's just a ton of fun to stare at. And
I mean, I can feel the love and joy in your house.
Yeah.
I mean, it is palpable between the
Yeah.
two of you
Yeah.
and the baby. You know.
she's awesome.
it's nice, and even all of that ridiculous craziness. While I am not one of those women who will say, "Oh, as soon as she's born, you forget all about it." It's nice when those women say that.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. I have not forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
But of course, it was worth every second. And you're like, well, forget about it. It's all fine now.
You either have to go through this, or you got to like wait forever for an adoption, and it's very expensive. So to get them this age, it's tough. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think everybody should have kids by a long shot. But I don't know. I feel like I've been hearing more and more young people that I think should have kids talk about like, I'll never have kids. And I think that they're,
Well, that's how you guys were.
Yeah.
When you were a little younger.
I think we were wrong.
Yeah.
I think that it's very short-sighted. I think it's like, it's not thinking clearly enough about like, whatever is making you busy right now is a bunch of fucking bullshit.
I like.
It's probably just your job.
I also feel like each sleepless night seems to last forever, but to sit here and be like, this all happened a week ago, kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I can already see how fast the time is going to go by.
Yep.
Like, I'm already thinking like, I'm going to be back to work in no time, and that's going to have its own whole new stresses of like the daycare schedule and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking like, it's going to be next year already.
Yeah,
like,
the time is going to fly by
I'm
now.
thinking like she's going to start having like, she'll be like cranky baby, which might even be harder to take out for a little while, but then she'll be like a toddler, and then that'll start being easy, and like it's just going to fly by, and it's going to be crazy.
One new fun thing after another, and one new stressful thing after another.
That's right.
And
I think that's what parenting's all about.
and it's kind of supposed to be life. I mean, I don't think you're ever supposed to go through any period of life that's just totally uneventful and boring. You're like, well, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but you have creative pursuits, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. But I don't know. I think it's like the best achievements are the ones that not just anyone could do. That you have to go through some kind of trial to get there.
Yeah.
Like running a marathon or making a feature film or whatever. And that's kind of what having a baby is like. And I think it's what raising a child all the way to adulthood is like. So
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being able to, we've been saying this, to like parent.
Yeah.
And not
You
like
can't
just
parent right now.
maintain.
Right.
Like it's just keeping alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I have a few things to pass on by this point. So I look forward to that.
Yep.
But that's the epic tale.
The epic tale.
It's
an epic tale indeed.
It was a long story. I was like, we went for almost 3 hours, I think. So hey,
Wow.
have your own kid maybe.
Maybe if it's right for you.
But maybe stay at home as long as possible. In all seriousness, because you want to avoid that Pitocin.
Yeah.
You really do.
That's your one takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're not planning on another kid still, but just like hypothetically, if we did, I was telling Frankie, like, if I ended up in a situation where I had to have Pitocin for some reason, I would get the epidural right with it, and the C-section would just be a risk because, and it would be awful. I don't want to have to recover from like abdominal surgery, but like I'd be like, I don't know what else to do. Like I can't go through that again.
Yep.
But it sure is nice that you don't have to be recovering from a C-section right now.
Right now, it's easy for me to say now that it's like fantastic. It's great.
Yeah.
No, Nina, for everything she went through, Nina's doing very well.
Yep.
I think you're doing great.
I think Gloria is doing fantastic.
And doesn't she doesn't look like she gave birth a week
No,
ago.
she doesn't. Nina looks like Nina.
Yeah, she looks like Nina.
Looking like a Nina.
Yeah, with like Photoshop upped boobs.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to say that.
It's okay. it's obvious and it can't be avoided. It's just like the first thing people see when they see me now.
Holy moly.
I've got these loner boobs that you get from breastfeeding.
They're not very useful sexually because, we're turned off for a little while.
Yeah.
Just squirt everywhere. Like even if you could, you wouldn't want to.
I'm grossed out by the notion of like tasting that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, there's that like New York place that made like the breast milk ice cream for a little while.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
I don't want to.
But baby likes it.
There you go. As long as baby likes it.
Well, thanks for listening to our stupid story. How much of that did you not already know? Probably tons of it.
A lot of it. I mean, a ton of small detail, and a lot of the stuff that happened during the delivery.
So it's our goal to keep the content up. We'll do our best. Maybe you'll forgive me if we skip a week or two, but
I'll forgive you.
yeah. But that's it. All right.
All right. See you next time.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you recording me?
Champion and
Nina's
finally
pregnant.
prove to everybody.
Are you really? Are you really?
That's just not me.
Oh my god!
I did. seem like a cat.
Oh my god, you're gonna kill her! She's eating!
That's why she's eating, because her stomach hurts a lot.
I get nauseous unless I eat like really
Oh my god,
frequently.
touch your belly. Hi,
She's 7 weeks.
It's still really early.
Be able to call himself.
So we don't tell anybody right now.
You're really the only person.
But you're here. We don't. John doesn't know.
Oh, he doesn't?
No.
Why are you telling me secrets? Ah!